All right, Joel Gausten here from joelgausten.com. For the first time in the history of this channel, I'm going to Alaska via the interwebs to talk to my guests. And these are two people I've wanted to chat with for a very long time in person. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome Cliff and Ivy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Joel.
Hi, Joel. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's time. It's great to
Yeah.
finally be on the show and get to talk to you.
hmm
yeah, absolutely. I know we were talking before we started. We've been chatting online for various reasons for a good 18 years at least at this point. So it's always nice to connect face to face, such as it is. And we have a lot to talk about because the one thing I've learned doing this channel is the world is a very, I would say small, but it's minuscule. How close people are based on their histories and geography. Even though you're out in Alaska, your roots are in New Jersey, as in my roots, and we have a lot of mutual musical histories as well, and different characters we've intersected with over the years. So we have a lot to cover, a lot to talk about. But first and foremost, I want to keep the conversation to start off with in the here and now, which is always the most important part of time. Um, you both have been not only a couple, but musical collaborators for 40 years at this point. For the past few years, you've been working on a project called Cliff and Ivy. You're about to, on the 4th of October, release your latest album, which is called Sinister Stars. And I have to say it's a fantastic record. I appreciate you guys sending me an advance copy of it. I've been listening to it pretty regularly since I received it. Beautiful record. So first of all, my congratulations to you on that.
Thank
So
you.
Thank you, Joel.
it's a fantastic listen. And I'm thinking of a way to kind of sum it up for people who are new to your music. How do I do that? And I guess one way to do it, I don't know if you would agree, but when I'm listening to the record, I'm thinking, okay, take the Wonder stuff, the Chameleons, Christian Death, the Pixies, Eva O, sort of put that into a blender, and you're sort of kind of close to Cliff and Ivy sound. That's the impression I get from the record. So if anyone's into any of the aforementioned groups, it certainly fits very nicely into that part of your record collection for sure. But I want to get into who else is on the album. Obviously, it's the two of you. You're the main drivers of this, but you have a couple of familiar names to people who watch this channel. I know Martin Atkins is on the album. Jim from the Smithereens is a part of it. Tom from 45 Grave turns up as well.
Tom
Uh,
Point, yeah, great drummer.
yeah, absolutely. And Paul Rossler, who's been on the show, is an old friend of mine. He produced some of it. So let's kind of start there. How did these individual people end up being a part of what, ultimately became the new record?
Yeah, I had a bunch of these song ideas I've been saving for years, and I was like, some of these song ideas go back like 8 years I was saving, and just they were like, ideas, it's not like just kernels of, this could be a great oak someday, and just grow it into whatever, and so had that, and really was just bugging her as usual, like, hey, we got to make something
It's the
happen.
creative process.
We're a duo.
Pass it back and forth.
We're like,
Ideas.
let's do this. So finally we're like, all right, we're gonna make it happen. So we went to go see the Smithereens live, and I saw Jim Babjack, and it was really, really great live, like really great, like lead guitar player, live rock guitar. And so I'm like, we got to do something with Jimmy. And I had a song, I had part of a song that I had already written, like, a while back, and I was like, well, that could be something that he could play on. And so I produced it, recorded the guitars and the bass, the rhythm guitars, and then recorded Ivy's vocals. And then we have our own studio, and like a small studio that we just do demos on and stuff. And then we brought it to New Jersey, and we had Jim Babjack from the Smithereens play lead guitar on it. And my old buddy from the Gout, Brian Troisi, he was also in Stampede, New Jersey metal band. Brian Troisi play the drums, and Jim went in there, and we recorded at House of Vibe Studio with producer Kurt Reel from the Gripweeds, real talented guy, super nice, and we got a great rock track with those guys. So we just started building. The whole plan was to go to New Jersey, record and play some shows. Go to LA, record and play some shows with at Paul Rosner's studio, Kit Robot Studios. So Paul ended up working on like more than half of the record. Actually, I think he produced six of the tracks, and most of the time I would record the guitars in Alaska and the guitar and bass, and sometimes the vocals, and then bring it to LA, or just the guitar and the bass and the like basic drum beat or whatever, and then bring that to LA. And then we would have Tom Coyne play the live in the studio, play drums, and Paul would add piano or synthesizer, and then Paul would record Ivy. So we had it depends on the song. There's like each one's different. And then so by 2023 we had 6 tracks done at the end of 2023, and then we went into like winter hibernation. So like for like 6 months we did nothing except just live. And then we had an art show. We did a family art show, so it was like a lot of other things going on at the same time, which we do like an annual family art show at the only record store in Alaska, Obsession Records, down the street from where we live. And they're super nice folks. They sell our stuff there. Anyway, so we recorded in LA, we recorded in Jersey, and so we came up like, it's like spring 2024, and we're like, we got to get this album done. It's like, because the tracks are great, so we're like, we got to finish this record. We got to have at least 10 tracks. So it came up that we got a chance to work with Martin Atkins, and he recorded drums in Chicago for the track Devil's Helpers. And so I sent him the demo. He played the drums on it, and then we sent all my tracks, the guitars and the bass and all that stuff, and the vocals, and we sent it to Paul Rosler out in LA, and he added the synthesizer. And and we got he edited Martin's drums and put it all together and mixed it, and there it is. And Martin actually added on the digital, there's a CD, right? So you can get a CD or a digital download of the thing, and you actually get 2 bonus tracks with the digital, as opposed to the vinyl. It's going to come out, it's going to have 10 tracks on the vinyl, but the digital, you get 2 extra tracks. And so instead of doing like a remix, what Martin sent me were bongos. So I have like track 12 is like a bonus track. It's called Devil's Helpers. It's the same song basically, except it's a disco beat with Martin Atkins playing Paul Raven's bongos. He plays Paul Raven from Killing Joke, because Martin has a museum called the PPIM, or is it
Post-Punk Industrial Museum.
Post-Punk Industrial Museum in Chicago. And so he gets all these donations, all these amazing like artifacts from the industrial punk scene or whatever. And so he got, all of our friend Paul Raven, rest in peace, his drums, his bongos sent from one of Paul's wives or whatever.
We had to use them.
And so I was like, he played these great bongos on it.
Yeah.
And so he sent me the extra track, and we didn't use it on the first track. It's more of like a rock track. So, so I was like, I got to do something with these bongos. And so, I slapped on some delay on there, and and there it is. And I mixed it myself, and so that's my production or whatever. But so that's called it's a Devil's Helpers Death Bongo Party, and then that's the bongos. But yeah, so we got a bunch of tracks, and I produced a bunch of tracks here that were just more homegrown. I'm actually in New Mexico. My cousin Matt Thomas sent me a couple of drum tracks. So he's on the track called "In the Name of Evil." He plays drums on that, and I looped his beats, and I added some more beats to it, and also this song called "Liars on Fire" has Matt Thomas on it as well on drums, but also has Tom Coyne, so it's like double drummers. We just stacked the beats on that one. It was like, I added electronic beats to it as well, and there's Matt Thomas's beats, and there's Tom Coyne playing live on top of it. So it's, there's a lot of, each track has like something going on. There's a lot of stuff happening. But yeah, so you got Martin Atkins in Chicago, you got Jim Babjack, you got Tom Coyne, and you got the great Paul Rosler out in LA with from the Screamers, and worked with Nina Hagen and all that stuff. He's just amazing. He's super talented. he records everybody. He's recorded guys from the Ramones, Blondie, the Stooges, TSOL. He's just always working with somebody.
He's so nice. I love him as
Yeah.
a producer and a
He's a
musician
really
and a collaborator.
really like nice person, like a sweet person to work with. But don't cross him.
So yeah, he's
Yeah.
really experienced and knowledgeable and very accepting,
Yeah.
and just helps us be, to be ourselves and to have our authentic vision come out. He's like the best producer
He's
we've ever worked
he's
with.
definitely like, I would consider, like, if you think of someone as like a magician, he would be like that. I would consider him to be like that.
Mhm.
Like so the traditional,
Mhm.
traditional sense.
I think you got the influences right too. I mean, the long story, like when you're done with all this work and then you listen to it, it's finally recorded and done. You kind of sit there and you say, that sounds like that, and this sounds like this other band. So I don't know what song or how, but I also hear a little bit of the Cult in it,
Mm.
and some of course, Killing Joke. There's some Killing Joke in there.
Yeah, I'm a huge Killing Joke fan. I love those guys. And there's, Susie and the Banshees. We love all that stuff.
Mhm.
The Undertones. So maybe you're thinking the Wonder stuff, but I'm actually not. I don't even listen to those groups that you're talking about. Maybe Christian Death, and
Yeah.
Eva O, but those other groups, no. And definitely more like
Let's get the Undertones
the
and the punk
Undertones
stuff.
or the Buzzcocks, that kind of, like the
Real power punk kind of,
yeah, love that stuff.
super sealed up composition
Yeah.
and stuff. But yeah, we're that's how it goes. We just
Well,
pass it around between ourselves.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I pretty much came up with the riffs on guitar. Mostly all the guitars, me, and except for the one track with Jim Babjack.
Mhm.
I wrote, all those were like almost all those things come from something that was like just sitting there and coming up with ideas, and then that's a good idea. I'm gonna save that idea. So remember your ideas, people. Write that shit down, and save it for a rainy day. Like I'm like, this is a good idea that needs to get preserved. And some of these ideas I had given to other people, they just were like, meh, didn't know what to do with it or whatever. And so I was like, no, I'm gonna keep that. And I just, it was like, this is the rainy day record that we're like, this is, you're gonna put out the thing that you think is like, has value. And so it had a lot of value to me as an artist. And so I was like, this is the right time to produce this record. So I felt like this is what it is.
Yeah,
That's what this record is to us.
some people who've heard it so far, mostly just DJs and our close friends, and they're like, it's cool because it has a lot of different styles on it, right? And that means a lot because the bands that I really love as my, desert island music always have a range. They put out a range of styles. I love Killing Joke, of course, and The Damned, The Clash. Those are all bands that aren't afraid to, of course, Susie and the Banshees, but they're not afraid to just put an art piece next to a complete rocker or something where it's like, this is our version of a reggae thing, they're like a gatherer, they'll keep it, they'll just get anything, get any influence and make it their own. And I think that's kind of something that's an old school thing nowadays that, that people are not as adventurous in putting different styles onto one album, which is, I miss that, I miss that because it's a fun expectation when you listen to that piece of work, like, what is this? And how does it go together?
I think most people listen to music that's varied. They like various styles mixed together. I mean, when I make a mixtape, I'll put Trouble Funk next to Killing Joke or something, like, mix it up, put something good next to something else. It's like when you're cooking, you got to try different flavors.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you've given me a lot to sort of unpack in your answers, not only musically, but in terms of contributors to the album. And as I said, a lot of these roots that end up on this record really go back to the Jersey days for you both. And, specifically that New Brunswick scene of the 80s that has kind of made its way into my channel as far as being a mainstay conversation. Um, so let's kind of bring it back to that beginning because as we said, you've been playing together in various projects for 40 years now. So that would kind of place things circa 1984, New Brunswick, New Jersey. Um, so there's a lot of projects to mention. There's a lot of history to mention. So I guess it all kind of begins with the Gout, which would be the first official band out of the gate. So let's kind of start there. What led you to, go from being participants in the scene as far as audience members to being in bands and kind of getting your foot in the door that way?
I started playing guitar in 1980 when I heard the Ramones and the Clash and the Devo and all these great groups that were happening at the time. And, just really was into the music and then just slowly started getting more and more turned on to like the more like the American like hardcore punk that was coming out. I didn't know much about it. And I just sort of were hearing murmurs about it. And so started going to shows in like 83 in New Brunswick area where they were putting on all ages shows and stuff. We met. She was going to shows in Philly and South Jersey,
Yeah,
and
I grew up in South Jersey.
yeah,
So near Cherry Hill, Woodbury Heights
same town
specifically.
as Patti Smith. She has the same birthday as Patti Smith too. It's
Specifically,
weird,
yeah.
but yeah,
So I went to shows in Philly a lot before, and the South Street scene was, so I've been to like a lot of those house shows and illegal shows and getting broken up by the cops
Love
and everybody runs. Love Hall, the old Love Hall, the new Love Hall. So yeah, and I was already interested in hardcore because I was listening to the radio at home by myself, with nobody around me in
Fat Harold.
suburbia,
Yeah.
listening to the Fat Harold show. And I was like, this stuff rocks. I really want to find out more about this hardcore. And that was it. It was just like sitting in your room listening to music, and I was able to get records in Philly and get to know people a little bit and stuff. So,
And so
then
yeah, I mean,
I went to college.
so she went to Rutgers, and so we met actually at the Clash concert in 1984 at Rutgers, and so I'm from that area, but she was going to school there and get her.
To me, it was the big city because I was from
Yeah.
South Jersey with like nothing, So when I moved to New Brunswick, I was very blown away, like by everything. I felt like I was in a big city,
Yeah, it's just quite a city.
Yeah.
But so you were getting your BA in fine arts there with studying under like New York, some famous New York
Yeah, I
artists.
went to art school, Mason Gross.
She's a really good visual artist, so I was like really impressed with her, So we met at the Clash concert, and then we got to be friends. And I had a punk band. We were called the Gout, and it was me and my high school friends, Todd Chafee, Phil Philippuk, and Brian Troisi, and Luke Lynch was the bass player. And anyway, so yeah, and Steve Cosmano joined later on, and Steve lived with Kara Ivy. They lived together
We
for a
shared an
short period
apartment
of time.
for a little bit.
He didn't have any place to live, and she was like, "You could stay at my place."
There was nobody else there, so I was like, you could stay at my place. But I used to ride my bike over to Cliff's house to,
my
to
parents'
hang out
house,
with him.
Jersey.
Yeah, to his parents' house. And he was in a band, and I was like, well, what could I do? What could I, I just really wanted to hang out with him.
Started joining in and
like I
singing.
like him.
Yeah, she was starting to, get it.
I just wanted to be part of it.
We were starting to,
it was fun.
Become better friends, and I got to know each other, and so she joined up with the group and started singing and doing the vocals, and then we got our first gig with Paul Declator was putting on the show, and so we're
There's
really,
another name.
really good friends with those guys from Pleased Youth, and hung out with them a lot, and Paul was such a like a deviant influence on our lives. He really like you could be hanging out with him, and it's like he's like, yeah, I'll pay for lunch, and then he's like, oh, I don't have any money. Let's just dine and dash. So he's like, stuff your face, like run out of there, sorry, but
Not proud of it, but
or we'd be like thrift shopping. I'm not gonna say where, but we'd be like thrift shopping, and like he's like, oh, let's go in that building over there. What's that? And then so we go in there, and there's like some.
He would like goad us to
steal
shoplift.
priest's outfit out of the some kind of
he stole
home that was
priest's outfit and then he wore it.
And then he would wear it on stage when he was like faux marrying us when we were in this band called the Dolphin Room. And
yeah,
it's just endless.
Such a bad influence, but fun.
Yeah,
he was just innocent.
Declator could get you to do anything crazy like that because you're just like, all right, just hilarious. The guy's so funny and smart, and. Everyone misses Declator, so he was a great, he was a huge pain in the ass, but he was also somebody that you loved very much. And,
yeah.
And he's
accurate.
Really funny guy, like a really fucking funny guy.
I think of him often.
Yeah.
He's definitely not forgotten.
Yeah.
I think it was, I can't remember if it was the Doug Visdom interview or the Dave Scott interview. I think it was the Dave Scott interview I did. We got talking about Decolator, and I only had one encounter with him, and it was when I was writing for the Aquarium, early 2000s. He had gotten a job there as the managing editor or something. I can't even recall. But one day he just calls me up, and there was no hello, hey, this is Paul from the Aquarium. He's just like, I go, hello, goes, where's that article? And I'm like, it's in your
Oh.
inbox, dude. It's been there for like 2 weeks. All right, I'll check again. Click,
Mhm.
and I'm like, that was Paul Decolator. So that was
Yeah.
it. That's my miniature. Paul Decolator story.
Sure. He was
Man,
super
yeah.
nice to us. I mean, we were lucky, and we were friends with him and his girlfriend Holly, so we would hang out with them a lot. It was like
At their
two
house.
couples. We'd go out to the movies
That-
together and hang
yeah.
out and just shoot the shit and stuff. We get the police youth, and he would drag us along to shows too, because
Mhm.
we, I was always broke. I didn't have a car. She got a vehicle, and
I got a van.
we were pretty much broke most of the 80s, but it was hard to get
Mhm.
demos made and stuff. But he would drag us along to shows, and so a lot of times he would invite us, and
Mhm.
we would go, and we'd go see Please Youth open for like a DOA at that show place and stuff like that. It's those kind of things that were really nice. That um, that Paul was a real nice guy, and
Mhm.
it's a shame that he's not around, but there's a lot of people like that
A lot of
that we
stories.
miss from
Mhm.
back in the day that aren't here, that they're
Mhm.
not here together because of one circumstance or another. But a lot of people, lost their lives to drugs or whatever happened.
Unfortunately,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's a lot of that. So so yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad to be sober, I have to say. So I've been taking care of myself for for a while, so
Good.
working on it. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's good. I encourage anybody out there to, if you're on the fence about it, you don't need it. You don't need drugs or drinking or anything. So cigarettes, you don't need any of that. You can
Yeah.
you can live without it.
I'm still working on the ladder.
Yeah.
That was the hardest one. Smoking cigarettes was the hardest. I have to tell you. You're right. It's hard.
Oh yeah. I know guys who have sat down with me, no names mentioned, but I've done conversations with musicians who talked about kick and smack, you know,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
they're smoking. We'll talk about how they
Yeah.
beat heroin as they're lighting up another cigarette. So you're like,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
I've been back
hard.
and forth with it for, the better part of 30 years,
I feel
Mhm.
like I had some spiritual help when I quit. It was like one of my family members that kind of introduced me to it sort of died 4 months before I quit, and then I just had the ability to quit one day, and it was just cold turkey, and I just never looked back. And I sort of credit that family member's
The
spirit
spirit of
to helping
them.
me with it, but I
Mhm.
don't know how that would have happened. I can't explain that, but and it really encouraged me to quit. So, and I
Yeah.
did. Yeah. So, but
But yeah, some of the funniest memories are around Decolator for sure. I know.
guys,
It's
so
just
it was a fun time. We had a lot of good time. There was a lot of interest in the music scene. So there was Deck Leader, there was Pleased Youth, Doug Visdom. We were in a band with both of those guys called Moby Dick later on. So let's run it down. We had the Gout, and that was just very short lived, like right to
as
1984.
many things were.
Yeah, we only played a few shows, and then there was then she started playing drums. So she played drums for
Yes.
like 20 years. And we had a group called Warm Love, and it was like, just goofy. We were playing punk, and we were just, it was just sarcastic, was like sort of, I would dress in drag or wear like old lady polyester clothes and just all kinds of crazy shit. And I had shaved my eyebrows off, and I had like
The
two
weirdest
I had
hair.
like two fucking like foot tall pieces of hair that look like alien, look like a bug or something like that sticking up. It was just about 1985, and it was just about being weird, and it was like,
Anything goes,
yeah.
but as long as it was obnoxious.
I don't know, we were into stuff like No Trend, and
Very much, yeah.
like
We
you
run
know
into Steve Blush at the record stores, local record stores. I remember going there and like I would habitually shop for some record. Like I needed new music like all the time. So whenever I had some money, I'd go try to get another record. And Steve Blush was there a lot. And I remember being in front of one of those, I think, Music in a Different Kitchen, I think. And they weren't open yet. They were supposed to be open. And here's me and Steve Blush banging on the door. Come on, get out. Sick, you know. So then I'd go in there and then he would like throw me records and hand me records. And he handed me No Trend. He's like, this one's good. And I'm like, okay, I trust you, you know, like, of course he'd say, and it was great,
Yeah.
you know, it was really, and it was fun. It was just,
We were so many great local bands too in New Brunswick.
yes.
That New Brunswick area, like that whole scene, we had, you know, had all the New Brunswick bands. You had like, yeah, all right. Let's say Please Youth. You know, who else? You had Detention, Cyanamid.
Mhm.
Who else? TMA. I mean, all these
Yeah.
these guys were around, and they were playing all the local shows every time. You know, they'd have bands that would play from the Philly area or bands from up
Yeah.
North Jersey,
Nihilistics,
right?
people
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah, all the Buyer bands, you know,
Mhm.
Buyer
Right.
record bands, you know, all those guys were great, you know, and we so see a lot of those bands playing at like Court Tavern shows, all Asia shows on a Sunday, you know. There was so many I missed
And
though,
don't
and I was
forget Genocide.
yep, Genocide, yep, Bobby Ebbs and all those guys.
We've been to that house plenty of times, hung out. I think I went to that house before I even met you. I remember when I was in college, I actually hung out at the Genocide house a couple times, and you know, wasn't like I was as I was by myself, I wasn't super comfortable being there alone. And then it was a while before I would go back and hang, but that was a big scene. It
Well,
was like a thing,
I
you know, to
mean,
hang out at the house.
we used to rehearse at the Rubber Room, which was Wendy
Yes.
Hughes' studio. She had a studio. It was above on what was it, Albany Street, and it was on the second floor, so you'd have to walk up. And
That's
it
great.
was great, yeah.
We could listen to Martin Atkins practice in there, and I was so super inspired by him, listening to his drumming and things. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, it's cool.
No, I'm good. The
Yeah,
Rubber
no,
Room.
there's the Rubber Room, there's Court Tavern, and sometimes we'd go to the Melody, but I was younger, so I couldn't get in. I didn't turn 21 till 1988, so I really couldn't go to any like the bar shows. But one time I got snuck into in like '84, I got snuck into the Roxy, which is across the street from where the Melody was, and it was Detention and TMA. And Kevin Shields from Detention snuck me in the back door. So there's some photos of the crowd, and I was like, actually, I was there, but I was sort of like hiding in the back, so I didn't because I didn't want to get you know, I already got carded, and they told me I couldn't come in, so I was like, all right, well, I got in anyway. But
Yeah.
it was a great show, and those bands, you know, there was like so many great punk bands in the area. Plus, there was like Bodies in Panic was another band from North Jersey. There was Sacred Denial. Just a bunch of bands that were always around. There was Send Help. That was another band that was from the area that was really good. Yeah, just remember all the hardcore shows, Patrick's, and then there was like local shows that they would have where they'd have like an out of town band show up, and they'd be at like the Elks Lodge or the Moose Lodge or whatever the hell it was, the Legion of whatever, you know.
Yeah, we were so lucky. It was just such a active scene, you know, with so many different bands, and people would influence each other. Like I played drums because there was a drum set left in my apartment, which was at the time above this bra shop on the main drag in New Brunswick,
Across from Mason Gross, the art
across from
school.
Mason Gross. And it was like one of those situations where all the art students would be in this one apartment and one of them would move out and they'd find, hey, you know, a classmate, they'd be like, we got a space, you want it? And I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna roll out of bed and go to the school, and I'm gonna go to shows down at the court, you know. I never had any problem getting carded because I don't think at the time they would card females. Like, you know what I mean? They were just like, meh, you come on in, you know. I don't remember having that. Even in
You
New
look old
York,
enough.
even in New York, they
Well,
would let us in.
So we were in
but-
Warm Love, the Gout, Warm Love, and then oh yeah, so no, sorry. Tell them the
the
story
bra
about
shop,
tell them
playing drums. Well, Cliff would come over and, you know, he'd say, we need a drummer. We can't find a drummer. We need a drummer. You should play. And I'd be like, I can't play drums. And he'd be like, let's put on a Ramones record and use those drumsticks and sit down and play it, you know. And so I would, because he told me to. I was like, okay.
keep a beat.
He's
Keep a
like,
beat.
just keep a beat. You can do it. And so I would do it. And then my arms were just like so tired and dead, you
Look at
know.
these arms.
Right. But now, no, but I kept on
Guns, you
doing
got
it, right?
guns.
I kept doing it. I kept doing it. And it was just playing to the Ramones. And he was like, you're sounding really good, And then I bought this like little baby Bobby Brady drum set, this tiny little drum set to play. But the funniest thing, there was a parking lot across the street where there was a guy in a like a hut where he would take your money for parking, and I would leave the building to go to school and stuff. And I would walk by this guy in the hut and I'd be like, hey, good morning, And then one day he goes, you know what? What? That guy who's playing drums up there, he's getting to be pretty good. Like meaning in my building, that guy's getting to be pretty good. I think I've been listening to him for a while. And I was like, I'll tell him that, like,
Yeah.
so then I felt more encouraged, to keep going and keep doing it.
Since you grew a
And that's
penis.
right. And that's why I bought that van, because I had this crappy old van because I had the drum set. And then I became the person who would like drive people around. And it was just another way to stay connected to the scene and stay needed and wanted,
Well, tell them what other superstar lives that was actually
Oh my God.
had the store below there.
Yeah, there was a video rental shop in the bottom of the building. And Ivan Crowell from
Patty
Patty
Smith,
Smith Group
yeah,
had that shop.
the bass player, guitar, keyboard player,
Yeah.
guitar player,
So
whatever.
we used to hang out down there and rent
Wrote-
videos
Who
and
wrote all
talk
those
to
great
him.
Patty Smith songs? Yeah,
Yeah, and then even there was
played with Iggy Pop.
yeah, but there
Yeah.
was a blues jam. They had a blues jam at one of these hippie places, or maybe just one of the like the pubs or
That was
whatever.
upstairs at the Melody one time.
Yeah, there was a blues jam and they needed a drummer and Ivan was gonna go and he was like, I'm gonna go play and they need a drummer. Do you want to try it? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I went and played in a blues jam with Ivan Crowell. And I sucked. But I did it.
It was all right. I was
I
there.
had
It was like,
fun.
it was all right. It was just nice to
Mhm.
see, to do it. But
Yeah.
he was cool, man. We used to rent
Yeah.
all these cool videos from him, and he would always tell us these. It blow our minds. We were like young
The
punk
stories.
people.
Yeah, we were like,
he's
tell
like,
us
oh
more.
yeah, the time I hung out with, I was touring with Iggy Pop, and I was like, fuck.
We were like, what? Like
What?
instantly.
Uh-huh.
Tell us more.
Yeah, we were
Super nice.
starstruck. It was pretty. He was super nice to us, though.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was cool. That's New Brunswick, though. You'd have Jim Babjack and Dennis Deacon from the Smithereens that owned a record store. We'd go in. We'd go in there when I was 13, and I was a kid, and I bought their first Smithereens record right off the counter for like $1. My mom actually bought it for me. My mom bought me their first record for $1 off the counter of their store.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, when I was 13. Like those guys were like homeboys,
Mhm.
They're like local, they're older than us, obviously, but we're they're super nice. Those guys are so down home, down to earth guys. And we're super like grateful to be able to work with Jim Babjack all these years since then, and Martin Atkins even, so all those connections, Brian Troisi and even Kurt Reel, get to work with Kurt. I mean, I never worked with Kurt before, but he was super great and really talented producer, musician. He's a great drummer too. So,
Yeah.
There are definitely names that you mentioned who are kind of legendary to, a certain scene. You mentioned Genocide. I mean, that name has come up quite a bit. I had John Steele on a couple months back. He was a later member of Genocide. And John and I have been intersecting in bands for years. Either he's followed me or I have followed him. But one of his earlier experiences was playing with Genocide, so that name does come up. It came up when I spoke with Martin Atkins recently for this channel. And another name that came up, and I won't repeat the whole story because I think there may be some overlap from the Martin Atkins viewership to this one. So watch the Martin video if you guys haven't to get
I
the
saw
full.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
But I definitely wanted to mention William Tucker because
Oh yeah.
we'll talk about phone calls. I had a very different experience than Paul Decolator because William called me one day after I had called Wax Tracks when I was a senior in high school. I was booking a hall in Franklin, New Jersey, northern New Jersey. And I had it in my head to see what Wax Tracks bands were touring to see if I can get somebody. And Tucker called me back. He was touring with Chris Connolly at the time. They were doing that Swingin' Junkies project.
Mhm.
I ended up playing in Pigface with Chris years later, but so Tucker calls me, and I knew who Tucker was, and I just kind of listened to William for an hour on the phone. Because like within 5 minutes, we knew we couldn't book a date because the dates just didn't align. I figured, okay, well, thanks for calling me back. But it was like, so what's your story, Joel? What are you doing up there? And before I knew it, an hour had passed. I was listening to this guy just go off, you know, um, energy,
Sucker.
just like
Really,
boom.
really interesting guy for sure.
Yeah.
And I know he had done some recording with you both at one point in time, right? That's how that
Yeah.
connection kind of
Yeah,
came to.
we were friends. We were friends with Tucker. We knew him from the Court Tavern scene, and our right around 88, 87, 88, we were in a band called Moby Dick. So we played in the Dolphin Room band, and that's a whole nother story. And then after that, we went and started another group called Moby Dick, and then there was two versions of that group. And Moby Dick was the second version was we were in the studio at Eric Rachel Tracks East, and William Tucker was there, kind of co-producing. He was hanging out. He was co-producing with Eric Rachel, but it was fun. We had a great time. Tucker used to come to our parties. We had a Gothic house in like '88. We had a Gothic house in Holland Park, New Jersey, and he was good friends with us and also our roommate, which was our housemate, which was Ethan Stein. And so those guys would hang out a lot. And Ethan was a fixture at the Court Tavern, just like us. And Greg Giju from the Wooden Soldiers, and John a lot was there as well. And all the girls like John
A lot.
And so
that became his name,
that's how he
John a lot.
that's how he got the name John a lot. Yeah. Super nice guy. And all those people, we were all roommates together in 1988, and we'd have these like cool house parties, and
Yep.
the it people would show up, and
We'd have like
hang out.
barbecues
Yeah.
and breakfast on Sundays,
was
or
fun.
like champagne brunch on Sundays for all the band people.
Mm.
That was in the Gothic house, which we lived in the carriage house behind it, and then
In '86 we moved into the carriage house, and then
Yeah.
and the lady who lived in the big house behind the carriage house, she was moving, and so she was like,
needed to rent it out.
I want to
So
rent
was
it out.
Like,
So
we're there, just because the house was so cool. It had these arches and there was all this marble, and there was like a Gothic revival
it
original
was a
home.
Victorian. It had like a big stone out front. So when you step off the carriage from the horse and carriage, you would
Mhm.
step onto the stone and then onto the sidewalk. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So you'd like
It was so cool.
Yeah, it was-
We lived in the attic
it was
of
that old. Yeah.
And then our housemates had, we just shared the whole space as one does, back in the day.
We lived in the attic. And
Yeah.
then we had a shared bathroom, so like everyone else would use the bathroom, and then we'd have to knock to come downstairs and like go
Because it
through
was on the way
go through the
downstairs.
bathroom.
Yeah.
We lived in the attic,
Yeah.
like we were
But it was
cousin
awesome.
Ed or something like that, living in the attic.
And there was other people living in Highland Park, and
Yeah, it was
different-
cool. It was
Cool.
good. I was a bartender at the Court Tavern, and so I would see Tucker all the time. I'd see Ethan and just everybody. John a lot actually was a bartender there as well, and I went to Bobby Albert from the Court Tavern. I said, hey, I'd like to have a job, and he's like, I'm 21 now, and he's like, you've been coming here for years. How the fuck did you get in here? And I was like, because they used to let me in the back door. I'd be in high school, and they would let me to play in my bands. They'd be like, you can play with your band, but don't drink. And so I'd be like, and then you have to leave after you play. So, and then it worked out, but
The court.
Tucker was actually at our wedding, which is pretty cool. Tucker was there. We had a wedding reception. Martin Atkins played at our wedding, and his band Lunar Bear Ensemble.
Yep, Lunar Bear.
Doug Wisdom and John Ritchie and Martin. Yeah.
Now, Martin mentioned when we spoke that you two were married on horseback.
Mhm.
We got married 8/8/88, and
Yeah, we had horses. We rented, they had a horse, an equestrian, facility, but a
8
little
horses.
business where you could rent horses to go for a ride. And so we had 8 horses, and I made all the costumes, and my friends so graciously wore them, as well as my husband graciously wore these like completely crazy costumes that I made. I wanted to make it like like a ritual celebration. And it was, a little bit at the time, it was kind of like, you know, it was like neo-pagan, neo-hippie punk, you know, kind of multimedia, you know,
It
that
was
type of
fun.
thing.
We just did what we wanted
But
to
we
do.
did have the horses, and we did have a lady marry us, and we had a bonfire, and then we had a great party at the court. So then it was a big, like, I don't even know half the people who actually showed up to the wedding part, the outdoor part. It's just like all these hippies and people who I didn't even
No, it was a
know.
lot of people that we
But
knew.
they were,
She
you know,
doesn't.
they were there because it's a party. What? Because I don't remember people. I have a hard time remembering
It
people.
was cool. We got married at 8 o'clock with 8 horses, and it was August 8th, 1988. And
Yep.
it was on TV, actually. It was on TV, and it was in the like the home news newspaper. It had a big full picture of us and stuff. We'll show you sometime, or you can look on our, yeah, we'll show you.
Yeah.
It was crazy. We're all dressed up, and we look great too. We were all young and skinny, and all that. So it was nice.
And it was a wonderful time
Yeah.
with friends and family.
And we're
Mhm.
still married. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Can you
Here we
believe
are.
that shit, kids?
That's wonderful. Well, I want to get into your honeymoon because that was kind of an interesting thing as well. But before
Yeah,
we do that, there's another band in there somewhere. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Is it Lesser Kudu?
Yeah.
And
there is.
that was the first time I ever heard of you because I'm trying to remember because that was around the time, even as a young kid, I started reading up on what was going on in Jersey. I couldn't go to the shows at that age. I was like still in grade school, but I was reading up about Lunar Bear Ensemble. I was reading about the very early days of Invisible Records, so
Yeah.
like reading the EC Rocker and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I do remember you and that band at that time, and a little bit later, like Bad Karma, Doug's thing.
Yes.
And so I was
Well,
reading
that's
about,
funny because some of the songs from Bad Karma were, I think they were post Pleased Youth, and the group that was post Pleased Youth was Moby Dick, which is like right after Pleased Youth broke up. We started Moby Dick, and it was the two of us. I was playing guitar, and Ivy was on drums, and then Paul Declator was playing bass, and Doug was playing guitar. And so Paul, we played a bunch of shows as Moby Dick like that, and then it was, and then eventually Paul left the group, and so Doug and I would switch from guitar and bass and sing. So I would sing a song on playing guitar, and then I would switch to bass, and then Doug would play the guitar and sing, his songs. So it was like that, and it went like that for a little bit, and then we were all like, well, we don't really want to play bass. I mean, neither one of us really wanted to play bass, and so we just drifted apart. We wanted to play different kinds of music, and Doug had his songs, and I did my stuff, and but yeah, I love Doug, and I love Paul Declator, and it was a great time, and I wish it could have lasted because it was a good group. It was really powerful. I wish we had gotten a really good recording of that group. The only thing we did get was I have some rehearsal tapes, which were pretty good, and they have never been released, which I'm gonna release someday. And then also there's a song called Satan Goes Surfing, which was a Dolphin Room song, but we did it with that group, and we recorded it in the studio, and it turned out
on YouTube.
it is on YouTube. Yeah, you can see there's actually a video.
Decalator is in it.
It's funny because Decalator didn't show up to the recording of the song, but then Doug didn't show up to the recording of the video. So Decalator's in the video, but he didn't play on the song. So that's funny. Anyway, but there's a video, Moby Dick, Satan Goes Surfing. So there's another lineup of Moby Dick where there's two drummers. So she was playing drums. Ethan Stein, our like roommate, he was also in that leather studded diaphragm group. He's played drums in that group. And then I was on guitar, and we had Greg Walker on bass from
Pleased Youth.
Pleased Youth, yeah. And he was also in Bodies in Panic. And so we went into the studio and recorded that lineup with the double drummers, with Eric, Rachel, and Tucker, and we have like a 4-song demo of that, which has never been officially released. And then it really never got finished being mixed. Actually, all we had was a tentative mix. Luckily, when Ethan Stein passed away, he died, and so when he died, he was the one who was holding on to the masters, and he had the DAT. I don't have the DAT of the mix down that we did with Tucker, so unfortunately that's lost. All I have is a cassette of that mix down with Tucker, which is cool. We could put that out too, but I have the reel to reel, so I think it's like a 1/4 inch reel to reel or something like that of the actual like original recording. And so, where am I going with this? So we actually, we had already broken up. When that group broke up, and
As groups did.
yeah,
It
we
was
didn't.
short-lived,
You know,
you know.
it went around. I felt like we pushed it as far as we can go with it, and then, you know, she wasn't feeling the double drummer thing. She wanted to be the only drummer, so we kind of just were like, you know, we're just gonna try something different. And so, we broke the group up, and then Martin Atkins, Ethan and Martin were talking, and Martin invited us to play on to have our tracks be on the first Invisible comp, and we never did. We never did it because the group had broken up. But, you know, looking back, I was like, I kind of wish we had put those things out there. But, you know, the group was already dissolved, so it's kind of like, I don't know. We were already on to Lesser Kudu, so we started Lesser Kudu, and it was the two of us, you know, drums and guitar, and I was doing the lead vocals, and then we had Greg Walker on bass, and then we had Fred Buckles, the guitar player from Bodies and Panic, playing with us. And then it was a 4-piece. And then that's in 88. And then later in 88, we had another lineup, which was Toby Record from, I think this is 89. We're talking about 89. Toby Record from PED playing bass. And he was more of like a slap bass player. And then Ivy on drums. I was on guitar and vocals. And then my sister Jenny was on lead vocals. And she wasn't even 21 at that point. She was still getting in when she was a teenager. She was still getting into the clubs and stuff. Oh yeah, she's in the band, you know, whatever. And then Todd Chafee, who was actually from the Gout band originally, he was playing on synthesizer. So yeah, we were making a bit of a stink around New Jersey. People were catching a whiff of what we were doing, and you know, and we were doing some industrial sort of. It had like a more of an industrial feel to it, kind of gothic industrial. You know, we'd already done the double drummer thing. We were doing double drummer thing before Ministry was doing the double drummer thing, you know, and we had this sort of Killing Joke meets hardcore kind of vibe. So we're like, when I saw Ministry for the first time, I was like, hey, wait a minute now, you know, hey now, I've seen that before, heard that sound before.
It was an exciting time for me, even though I was too young to venture out to see the
Yeah.
bands. I could very easily walk to the local convenience store, drop $1.50 and get the EC rocker and kind of live vicariously through the stories. But 89, I mean, there was so much going on in Jersey, even North Jersey, you had the Pipeline. You had people like Mike Hideous and the Empire Hideous, Sweet Convulsions, those kind of bands. You go further south, you had Lesser Kudu, rumblings of Invisible Records, you know, was happening. I remember reading about Lunar Bear. And of course, you know, we mentioned Bad Karma and that whole thing. And of course, the Smithereens at that point were like huge.
Yeah,
You know,
they blew up. Yeah.
they were like the band at that time from Jersey.
Yeah.
So it was cool to kind of see where things were going. And I'll make one quick point, and then I'll get back to your honeymoons. I want to get into that. But you know, the Court Tavern is a funny place because I didn't start playing there until after I had moved to LA and moved back to Jersey.
Oh,
So this
wow.
has been like 2007,
That's so
2000.
weird. That is
Yeah.
weird.
So
Like,
I was
we like,
out.
yeah, go ahead.
So I came back to Jersey, and we'll get to LA because you got LA buddies, and so do I, who are the same people. But I moved back to Jersey, and we did a benefit show for Paul from AOD was doing a Cancer Society benefit, if I recall.
Hmm.
And I had been on and off with this band forever called Broken Heroes. And a lot of people who play in Jersey, punk rock and oi, they've also played on and off in Broken Heroes. Like everybody's
Respect to Andy.
well, that's
Mhm.
where I'm going with it. Andy from Pleased Youth is the current bass player in
He's
Broken.
great. Yeah.
At the time, we had Quincy from Murphy's Law playing bass.
Yeah.
And, we played with AOD, Lindsay Anderson, who's been on the show with her band, the Kowalskis, were on that bill. But yeah, the cool thing, and I came back a few months later and played with Bobby Steele because I was in the Undead at the time. Of course, another Court Tavern mainstay from that earlier period. So, you know, I remember Bobby Steele telling me about having late night conversations with Atkins at the Court Tavern, you know, and then Andy's in this band that I was playing with at the Court. So it all kind of goes together.
Yeah.
That's what I love about doing this channel, is because you think on paper there are all these disparate guests, but not really.
No,
Not
they're
really.
connected.
Everybody's played with everybody else. Everybody's been in the same scene. It's like if
It's
you're
a really
Mhm.
there was a really cool hub happening there too, because you got touring bands coming through that area,
Yeah.
New York, Philly, Jersey, plus you have no, not the time. You have you have the central Jersey, sort of like the hub for, either bands are gonna play Maxwell's, they're gonna play, Court Tavern, or they're gonna play this is the wrong time for this. Our pit bull's trying to play with us right now. She's
Ah,
yeah, no, she's interrupting. But yeah, so the Court Tavern you had, she's bumping the thing. The City Gardens too was another hub for,
right.
touring groups,
Yeah. I mean, it was a real interesting time. And then by the time I was playing, which was early 90s, there were still awesome bands happening, like a lot, like at that point, like obviously Martin had gone to Chicago, Tucker had gone out to Chicago, and it took me a few more years to catch up with them because, I'd kind of missed them by the time they were out of the Jersey scene, but Chicago captured me a few years later. Um, but I want to get back to your honeymoon because it was on your honeymoon, which was in England, right?
Right.
Yeah.
We got married in 1988, so August 88, and then October 88, we flew to London. We actually brought Greg Walker from Pleased Youth with us. So that's weird, but I know
It was a honeymoon,
we're
but we were
friends,
just like
so
a traveling vacation with friends. It wasn't,
yeah.
like a
We ended up staying in this guy's council flat. It's like this like
it's a weird story.
low income government funded
Yeah.
like apartment basically. We stayed in this apartment for free basically, and this guy was like, yeah, stay in our council flat, and so we're like, okay, so we'll just we're like, hey, we're thrifty, we'll take advantage of the situation. Anyway, it worked out, it was nice, and the guy let us stay there, and so we're out, and God, you tell them the story about the walking down the street. We're gonna get some dinner. Let's
Yeah, we were
preface the
just
story.
having fun. We were having a good time, and we flew on People Express, which was this airline where you could pay cash on the plane. And it was like the most affordable one, which doesn't exist anymore. But anyway,
Smoking.
yeah, they could smoke on the plane and everything. It was just so out there, but in today's world. But anyway, we were just having a good time. We went to do some touristy stuff, and the individual that whose council flat it was like working at the Tower of London, and I believe it was like a work assignment because he had done some kind of crime and he had to like work it off, like it was a
Yeah,
you
it
had
was
to
a
work it
shifty
off.
character.
Yeah.
We're sitting in the shifty
We were
characters
just like, I don't know
apartment.
about this guy, but anyway, so we were walking down the street, we were having a great time, and I was like, oh man, I'm hungry, let's get some dinner. And it was this street with a lot of different kinds of restaurants and some fish and chip places and stuff. So we walked by a couple of them, and I saw this fish and chip shop that had hippie beads, and it was like really funky decorated, super funky,
And I was
like
like, don't go in that one.
yeah, like bright colored beads all
Fucking
over the
hippie.
place, and I was like, oh, I love it. Let's go check that one out. It looks awesome, just because it had a weird decor.
I was like, all right, let's go.
And I'm like, let's go in this one. It'll be great. It's awesome. So we went in, and then in the back, there was like a curtain of beads here and there. And there was a curtain of beads for like where you could go sit at a table. So we go in the back, and there's one person sitting back there, and it's Martin Atkins.
Hmm.
He said, oh, it's you.
He's like looking as he drops his fork, and he's like, what are you doing here? And we're like, well, we're on vacation, we're on holiday, we got married, and we have our bass player, we're just friends traveling now, just for fun, and he was like, well, great, do you want to come see my new band? And we're like,
huge Killing Joke fans. We're
yeah,
like,
we're
fuck
like,
yeah.
sure.
I had no
He said,
idea he
"It's
was
Killing
even.
Joke."
We had no idea he was even in London. I thought he was in Germany or something. I had no idea where he
Right.
was.
So he's like, you want to come see my new band? And
Yeah, they were like, yeah.
oh yeah.
So we went to Killing Joke rehearsal the next day. It was great, and we got to meet the bass player from the Smiths. He was there. They were trying him out. He was like getting the.
Yeah, he was getting the Killing Joke treatment.
He was getting the Killing Joked.
Killing joked. Yeah. It was terrifying.
It didn't work out for that guy, but
it was great.
They ended up figuring it out, and the rehearsal was great though, and we got
They
to
shut the doors, it's dark. and blowing like tons of incense. So it's like Killing Joke in the dark, like 5 feet away from you.
It's like it was a bunker. It was like street. It was right next to it was right on the street, and it was a
Mhm.
little bunker that was like right on the street. You go in and it's like you step down, I think, a little bit, and then there's you wouldn't even know there was a rehearsal space there. It was so weird. It was like
Mhm.
it was great though, and it was like I
Mhm.
forget what part of town that was. It was
I don't remember.
yeah.
Was it
Anyway,
near the Pineapple Pub?
no, it wasn't.
No.
No.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was great that we went there twice. We went to 2 days in a row, and yeah.
Yeah,
It
there
really
was
cool.
nothing like it.
We got to they went on tea break and I said, "Hey, can we play you guys a song?" So they took a break and they had their tea and whatever else they're going to have a cigarette or whatever. And then they sat there and we actually played two Lesser Kudu songs for them.
Mm.
And then
Mhm.
and I'm playing Geordie's guitar and then Greg's
And I played
playing
Martin's
the bass.
drums, you know.
Yeah, she's playing Martin's drums and then Geordie jumps up and says, "Oi, the girl is great."
They didn't expect that. They didn't expect to see me play. And then when I did play, they didn't expect to see what they saw.
Geordie was like
You
singing
know,
along with us. He's
I
like
could
singing the
tell.
background parts and stuff.
Yeah. So it was really fun.
They were super nice. They were really nice.
super
Yeah.
nice to us.
Yeah.
And it's just really unique.
There's a picture somewhere. I'm in
Yeah.
this like Killing Joke fanboy like book. There's a book and then there's a picture of us with Killing Joke in 1988 from that Martin took. It's in that book. It's somewhere like
Of us at rehearsal.
yeah, it's us.
That
The way we
lo-
looked,
that
we looked pretty
location.
out there.
We're like costume 100%
Yeah, I'm
of the
pretty.
time.
We used to
Yeah.
wear whatever we wanted to wear and didn't give a fuck.
Spray paint
we looked
everything.
really we looked really different from what everybody else was looking like at the time.
It wasn't
And
even punk. It was like
you know what?
we
I
were
saw
punk.
I
but
saw
it
early
wasn't
I saw
punk.
early pictures of youth that he looked a lot like that too. So it was like maybe there's some sort of some kind of energy that's similar in that way.
Mhm.
But yeah, I saw pictures of youth and I was like, wait a minute, that's like what I looked like, but it was like
Mhm.
8 years later or whatever it was.
Yeah, I've seen that photo before, and I think I may have that Killing Joke fanboy book here.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you probably are in it too, aren't you?
I think yeah, that's
Are you?
that one that came out a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, Chris Bryant's book.
They did a great
Right.
job.
Yeah, I am in that. I wrote a few things about that, which is interesting, and I want to bring up what I wrote about because when I first crossed paths with you on MySpace,
It's like,
I can't recall how that happened, but we became like MySpace friends. And
sure.
I'm looking at your page, and I'm like, I know this guy from somewhere. I have seen this
Mm.
guy before, and then it all clicked. I'm like, aha, the El Rey Theater, Killing Joke, 2003. I was in LA at the time. I went to see Killing Joke at the El Rey, and I remembered you like running around the stage getting things prepped for
Oh yeah.
Killing Joke. So,
I
you
was
know,
the road, yeah, from like New York to San Diego. We went Toronto and Vancouver,
In
and then we
Australia.
did a week in Australia. So it's like a month on the bus with Killing Joke, and then a week in flying dates Australia. But it was crazy and it was so much fun, but it was a lot of work.
and this was the tour with Ted Parsons on drums,
That's right.
Paul Raven on bass,
Yeah, Nick
Nick
Walker
on
on keyboard.
keyboards, yeah, and of course Heckle and Jekyll up front. So how did you end up getting that gig to
Yeah,
be
it's
on
just
that
been a
tour?
fan for a long time, and Geordie remembered me barely. I don't think those guys remember me really well, but I think it kind of came back. And um, I was friends with Paul Raven online. We would chat and stuff, and I think Paul maybe remembered me a little bit from back in the '80s or the early '90s when we had met before backstage at the like Extremities tour era.
Mhm.
We hung out a lot with those guys during like the late '80s and early '90s, and so I just asked Paul Raven. I said, hey, if you guys are ever gonna need a roadie or whatever, I'll do your guitars. I'll be your guitar tech, basically. And they were looking for somebody, so it's like there it just worked out.
That's really cool. And the Heckle and Jekyll bit actually came from Raven. That's what he called Jazz and Geordie.
Right?
Yeah, it fit.
It's accurate.
It fits. Yeah, it fits.
It's
And,
accurate.
Raven was an interesting bunch of guys.
Yeah.
That's how I would best describe that,
Yeah, he's a character for sure. He was really funny, really smart too.
yeah, Yeah, very smart, very funny. He taps me on the shoulder now and then. When I was moving out of my house right before COVID hit, like right before lockdown, I sold my house and I was moving. And I'm moving boxes and I'm over my head and I hear clunk and I look down and it's his old phone book I had from years earlier. And it opened up to Paul Raven's phone number when he was out in Portland.
Wow.
Mhm.
And more recently, I'm going through these old micro cassettes. And I've been talking to Martin about maybe digitizing some of that stuff,
I would love to hear all of that stuff.
for the museum, because I've got tons of Killing Joke audio,
Yeah.
tons of Genesis Peorage audio, stuff like that.
Nice.
So I suck at labeling things, which is a problem I've had forever. So I'm like
Yeah.
doing this archaeological dig in all these cassettes.
Yeah, I get you.
I popped one in and it's Raven talking to me.
Wow.
Every once in a while, we
That's
had
so eerie.
we had a
Yeah.
colorful relationship for a while
Yeah.
there. But I will say that funny, like sinister funny,
Yeah.
smart funny, dark
Yeah.
funny, but
Very. Mhm.
like drop to your knees and laughter funny,
Yeah.
Yeah.
interesting character, and it's a funny thing with Killing Joke, they're
He was
it's
super talented though. All those guys are really talented.
Oh, they
Yeah.
get into your soul and into your blood. And there's just no way
Really
out of it.
like all those guys are really magnetic too. They're like super like
They're in our
yeah.
soul and in our blood, and that's just the way out, the way it is.
And
That's how it is with
I
them.
believe that you were like that, if you feel like there's otherworldly sort of connections there. I believe that because I've had stuff happen to me too. Like when Geordie died, we had tell him a story about the book, the cat thing that happened.
Oh, you know how they had a whole kind of philosophy going along with everything, and a lot of it was influenced by magic, and some of it was influenced
It
by
was a book though. You're talking
earth magic, specifically the Odic force and like some of the things that in the Courtauld talks and things like that, and the Cytherea thing,
Well,
you
and
know.
in the late '80s,
Right.
they're like fan group, or we're gonna call what turned into the Gatherers or whatever. That was called Odic.
The
Yeah.
Odic, yeah. But anyway, I have like long before the internet, because I always liked weird esoteric occult stuff, especially on the darker side of things. We used to like get a lot of books, and I'm a big reader, and I used to get a lot of books, and I'd get books, I'd borrow books online, not online, but by mail. I'd borrow just basically books you can't get anywhere. Like you would get them at an occult bookstore,
The
but
Lucis Trust
yeah, you could, from the Lucis Trust Library, you could borrow a
in New
book
York.
by mail. And so I would borrow these books by mail, and then I would copy them, Xerox copy them. I just go to the copy place and just copy
These
the
are like
whole
out of
damn
print
book.
books. You can't get them anywhere,
Yeah.
and they would lend them to you. So it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, and then I just copy them. I know you're not allowed, but I'm like, I don't want to borrow this
Yeah, whatever.
book forever. I want to just have it. So I had a book like that, and I have a bunch of books and some backpacks. I'm like you, I don't like really, keep everything super or kind of loosely organized. But anyway, I had this particular book in a copy of a book like that in a backpack, and
So
for
Geordie
no
had passed
reason.
away.
Yeah, no reason at all. That particular book with the Odic, with a passage about the Odic force in it, which I had borrowed that book just to learn about
We
this, so
hadn't
I could talk about
we hadn't
that.
seen this book in years, by the way. We haven't
No,
even looked at this book in
no,
years.
but the cat pulled it out. I don't know what pulled it out, honestly, but it was like in a zipped up backpack. I came home and it was laying on the floor in a mess.
It was under a bed though. It was like under
Yeah,
a
it was
bed.
pulled out from
It
under
was
a
pulled
bed.
out, and then the cat had vomited on it or something like that.
On it.
And it was
And
right to
yeah,
the book that says
and I
the
was
Odic.
like,
Go ahead.
right.
Go ahead.
I was like, well, what am I going to do with this book? I got to clean all this barf off of it, and why did this happen? Why was I forced to pick up this book
Tell
and
them the
look
name of
at
the book
it?
though, and the author.
It was Dane Rudyard,
Tell
right?
him. Tell him.
Dane Rudyard, and I can't remember the title, Cliff.
It was called Dissonant Harmony.
Dissonant Harmony.
Dane Ridier, which is one of
Dane
the
Rudyard.
books that Killing Joke guys were very into.
Which is why I would have
Yeah.
gotten it from that
sure
library and
you could
copied
ask
it.
Jazz Coleman about it
Right.
or whatever. Dean Ridger, Dissonant Harmony.
But
Yeah.
it talks about the Odic Force, talks about music, it talks about raising energy with music, and talks about earth energy and music, like all the stuff
It's
that
all the
they,
stuff they talk about,
yeah.
all the stuff that they're influenced by, that kind of stuff. So
So
there it is, like those guys are definitely reaching out, I believe
besides
it.
for
I
the
believe
fact that it was cat barf, I just had to get over that and be
I've
like,
had
well, I'm supposed to look at it, obviously.
I've had dreams with Paul Raven though. I've had dreams of him post, his passing and all that. I've had a few dreams of Paul Raven in him already, so
Mhm.
I believe in that stuff.
Yeah.
I've had Steve Silver on, who toured Magic Extremities tour. I've had Alex.
That was a great interview, by the way. I
Yeah,
love
I love Steve. He's gonna come back probably
The
with that.
Geordie story was great. That Geordie story was
Yeah,
killer. That
yeah.
was
No,
hilarious.
I'm glad Steve came on because it was right after Geordie had passed, and I'm like, I think it's important to have some history here.
Mhm.
And my voice, I had laryngitis at the time. It was just like, ugh. But I'm like, it has to be done. And I wasn't about to contact, Big Paul or Youth or somebody. I'm like,
Yeah.
talk to somebody who I think could probably offer perspective. And Steve, to his credit, was dealing with his own thing with Geordie, his own sort of mourning. But he came on and told those amazing stories. So I was happy to have some sort of way to acknowledge what had happened and put some history
Yeah.
out there because when I had Alex Smith on, we talked about this. There is something about this band that is more than just, hey, we're fans, we're going to go see this band tonight. I have been in Killing Joke audiences and have met people who took me on adventures, um, of the female persuasion in the audience at Killing Joke shows, you know, minds on fire, and just switched on people, that, make me realize years later, like, what the hell was that? Like these whirlwinds of
It's
personality,
weird, isn't it?
you
It
know.
just everyone has these
It's
stories
the type of
around.
people that music attracts
I
for sure.
know. I know.
And it's like the culture, at the time, just it was a really good. I mean, the group's really great. I mean, they're legends. So I mean,
Yeah.
their whole catalog's amazing. They go from this to this, and it's still, everything is great. So
As much as I love talking to the band, I had my friend Drew Stone has a podcast I co-host sometimes, and it's a
yeah,
live broadcast. We had Youth on
I
uh
saw that. Great.
about a
Nice.
That's
year
great.
ago. Yeah, Youth was on. We had Youth on for like 2.5 hours. Um, I've talked to Jazz.
Mhm.
Never interviewed Paul, but I've talked to Paul quite a bit over the years. All fascinating people, but I think the magic of Killing Joke is the people it attracts. I'm never bored talking to a gatherer. Everybody is always very switched on, and it is that communal thing. Like if you're in this room at a Killing Joke show, you are with your people, and you can strike up a conversation with any of these people and have your mind blown by what they have to offer you. And by extension, you do projects with people you meet at Killing Joke shows. You crash on their couches when they're in town, and you may not even have talked to this person for years after meeting them, but like, hey, I'm in town, you know.
Yeah.
We've actually had gatherers, like let us stay at their house when we go to
We
England.
have, yeah.
Like we stayed at
You're totally right.
Woody's
Mhm.
house when we went to England, and yeah, just super nice
It's
people.
like
It was like, you're one of us, it's like
yeah, it's your
Cuba Gaba.
people. It's your people for life.
And you
So
don't
you're
get that from like a Smash Mouth show,
no,
you know?
no. It's
So there is
completely on
something,
another level.
yeah. And I'll tell you, I mean, some of the most intense interactions with anybody from my experience have been with Killing Joke members. 18 years of pig face will do it. Trying to attempting to write a book on Killing Joke will do that too.
Mhm.
Very intense people, and I appreciate that. It hasn't always been smooth, and it hasn't always been positive, but goddamn, there's a purity and there's a fire in these people, and the fact that they can all get together and do this band and not have it explode, I think is a testament to, you know what I mean? Like, look at these people and put them in a band and put them on the road. They're like, how does this possibly work? Well, Cliff knows better than anybody. He dealt with it for an entire tour.
Yeah, it was great. You know, we did that. I mean, um, you know, back to the Killing Joke, we hung out with those guys a lot in the late '80s when Martin was playing with them and the Extremities tour era. And then when Martin moved to Chicago in 1990, we were actually, well, actually it was '89. Killing Joke was sort of like he said. I was listening to your interview. He was really based out of New Jersey at that point, and then they moved, or Martin moved. So we ended up living in Martin's warehouse. We took over his loft space. And so when Martin, I guess at least for about 1989, most of '89, we were, living there at Martin's loft space. So he had like a shower, and it was made out of an old telephone booth. So you go in like a Superman, and you shower, and it was cool.
Yeah.
He had like these
Very
wooden
cool.
lofts, sleeping, and our Lesser Kudu rehearsed there. We practiced there. Yeah. And New Brunswick is just really, there was like a real small scene there, and everybody kind of knew each other, and it was cool. And then Martin moved out, and Tucker moved out, like you said, out to Chicago. And we kind of were, I felt like we were sort of like we could have done that, but going back to the '70s, my father worked for Sears in New York, and it was kind of across the street, this big office building across the street from the Winter Garden Theater, and it was like Sears in New York. And he got told that he was supposed to move to Chicago to work in the Sears Tower in Chicago, and he just said, I will not, I won't be caught dead in Chicago. And he never moved. He never moved out there. And the Sears, all the people that moved out to Chicago ended up getting fired the next they all got shit canned the next year after they all moved out there. So I guess he did the right thing, and he started up his own business and stuff and did that. So that's kind of what we did. We were just like, we ended up, instead of going to Chicago, we ended up moving to Oakland, California for 3 years. And we lived in the hood, and it was like, we went from one hood to the other hood. And then we lived across the street from the guys from Flipper. The Bruce Luce from Flipper was across the street in this big warehouse. When we were moving in, it was like the office. It was like a 1940s steel factory, this huge like block size warehouse, and then across the street was the office building. So we lived in the office building, and then the landlord's like, well, we were looking for a place to we just moved out with our stuff.
We had a car and a dog.
We had a van, and we drove with a dog and all of our stuff, and we just like
in the van,
slept in the parking lots for 2 weeks. And
yep.
The first place we found was this warehouse space, or this office space for artists, And she's like, yeah, across the street there's this warehouse, and they do execution style killings over there. And do you sure you want to live over there? And we're like, or do you sure you want to take that rental space? Because we were like renting it as artists. Little did they know we were going to live there, But we ended up moving in.
As Mark did.
Yeah, it was like, So anyway,
and it was cheap.
We got this
compared
place
to what things are now.
Yeah. And it was nice. We lived there for 3 years, except it was in the hood. So every night it was gunshots, Difficult. It was crazy. It was like the crack era, so it was really, there was a lot of shit happening, and it was pretty wild. And we were lucky, to not get too much trouble. And we ended up moving up to Alaska in 1993.
Mm-hmm.
And we liked it. So there was a bit of a scene here when we moved here, but then it sort of tapered off, and then COVID just killed whatever scene there was. It was like COVID wiped out that whole thing, but it's sort of coming back now, which is good. So we've been up here for
why Alaska? Why Alaska?
My mom had already moved here, and my brother had already moved here. And she was with my stepdad, who's still here. My mom passed in 2019. But she kept on saying how nice it was here, and how I should come visit, and how we might like it,
was
and
beautiful.
How there were bands here. She knew I was crazy. Like she knew I was a punker, and obviously, and she was like, you would really like it here. I swear there's enough going on here. You should check it out, So we came up here, and when we realized the magnitude of nature and that there were a few things happening here and that we could travel.
We did art, we did performance art, we did, visual art.
We started doing the performance art thing. We got involved with the local theater, which was doing kind of experimental
making music for
stuff.
theater and performance art and just doing all kinds of stuff.
And we just ended up staying. It's a nice place to live. We were able to get jobs that were okay, and
we survived.
not like not like in Oakland. It was like I could get a job slinging smoothies in a truck, and that was basically it. There was just in that time of in the early 90s, there just was nothing. Even with the degree, it was like I tried. I worked in retail, but it was really just, so anyway, it ended up working out. It was definitely a breath of fresh air to be in a safer place. We had only lived past college, we had lived in warehouse spaces since college, where we lived in shared apartments or shared homes.
We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't grow up with a lot of money.
Yeah, when I came here,
middle class, and then when we moved out of our parents' house, it was even like we're just like
right. We only lived in warehouse.
We had
spaces.
retail jobs, so it's not like we don't come from money. We're not.
And then our home, the first home we had in Anchorage, was like the first house that we lived in.
Yeah.
As a couple,
we bought a house.
That was like a house that was only us living in it. Other than that, it was warehouse spaces or,
Then we bought another house when when you got pregnant, and then we had our first son, Wolfgang. And so right after you had Wolfgang, we got this house.
We had it right. Well, we got this house right before I had him.
Right.
And that's where we still live.
And that's cool.
Yeah.
We live right in the middle of the city, and it's like the suburbs, but it's like the smallest city in New Jersey would be more people than here. It's like crazy.
Yeah.
We come from like the most people per square mile in New Jersey to like, this is like the whole population of the state is like one town in Jersey. You know what I mean? So it's like the biggest state in the country too. The state is huge. It's like, you think about it, we're South Central, and we're South Central Alaska, and then from like Anchorage to like Seattle is New York to LA. That's how far away we are from the rest of the country, And then the size of the state is like you could probably fit 3 Texases in this state, So it's really big. There's a lot of stuff happening that you don't know what's going on, which is weird because there's a lot of military stuff going on, and they don't really talk about that, but
yeah,
there is all kinds of weird shit happening.
We don't have
in that way.
Yeah, we don't have a scene, like a music scene like we were accustomed to growing up with, but still it's interesting because people conceive of this place as there's nothing, like but it's not true. There's actually everything. And I'm not saying scene, not what you think. There's not scene wise stuff, but there's just a whole lot of things going on. There's been people living here since the dawn of time. There's
the native and
indigenous people. There's all kinds of art from our indigenous people that it's everywhere. It's like I haven't lived in a place like that where, growing up on the East Coast, the local bank might be named after the Indian tribe that used to be there a long time ago, before you were even aware as a human, but here it's like, it's all together, everything is, and it's very active, and the nature is very much a part of your life, whether you're going hiking on purpose or whether you just live here. So, animals are a big part.
Yeah, I'm like indigenous. When my grandfather was like, I don't know, when I was like 36, my grandfather was like, "Oh yeah, did I tell you guys are Native American, or you guys are Cherokee?"
The family hid it.
I was like, "Huh?"
Family
what?
didn't want anybody to know.
So anyway, that's more to learn about what's family history and all that. But yeah, I do have some of that in my family too, for sure.
But there's a lot of
I'm real proud of that too.
Yeah. And people just sort of take you as you are here. People have been super friendly here. I'm not saying like as far as our bands go, I mean, we've definitely been groundbreaking and blew quite a few minds here. But it hasn't been like,
there was 5 people there and we blew their minds, but that was like,
there's a few people. We blew some minds in Jersey too.
Well, I think, you try to inspire people to do stuff. And if it's on a small level, that's great. Like the first time I saw White Zombie play, there was like 12 people at the Court Tavern. Like there was nobody there.
Same thing with Butthole Surfers. Like nobody would go. And we'd be like, this is great. you know.
You've seen some of those shows you've seen that were
Mhm.
like, there was like a dozen people there, and then the band was fucking awesome. They had shitty gear, and but they had it. They had it. And you knew that they had something. And when I saw them play at the Court Tavern. 12 people, you could tell that they had it, whatever that is. And I
Mhm.
was a fan of them. When I saw them, I became an instant fan. I bought all their records and sold all their
Mhm.
records already because I got $100 a piece for them or whatever it was, at the time. But
There's a lot
yeah,
that, there's living in Jersey, growing up in Jersey. I love it. I still love New Jersey. There's just a lot of logistical bullshit that you have to put up with. And that we don't have that here, like lines, bad traffic,
yeah,
people who are rude,
it's nice. Move up here.
territorialism, there's not a lot of people, there's just not a lot of people here. And I believe that the weather prevents people who have like nefarious intent from even trying to live here. So, I mean, it's
I don't know.
in that way,
It's a different way to live.
it's like a break.
We're older, so we don't really need to be validated by going out to like the bar. We don't drink, and we don't,
Right.
we
That's
don't hang
true.
out. We don't hang out in those places. It's like that's a long time ago for us. So we're just sort of like, I mean, if we never play out again, like, and we just make recordings, it would be okay.
But we love to play out. And
I love to
obviously
play
we
out.
reach
Yeah,
out because that's why
yeah.
we got connected with all the people in
Well, I
LA.
mean, we're online. Yeah.
We're online. The online thing is like we really,
We never had
especially
this in the
Cliff, is
80s.
able to exploit the heck out of that and just basically being friendly, and just asking. Like when we had Don Bowles play drums with us, out of circumstances, we needed a drummer for a live act, which was Cliff and Ivy, but with a
Well,
band.
Cliff and Ivy
We
started
just called him up.
2011, and it was just
Mhm.
the two of us, and we recorded in Van Nuys. We recorded our first CD or whatever.
Friend of Toby.
Yeah, a friend of Toby's. It was like this
Toby
guy,
was there at the time. Yeah.
producer Ashley Witt, and he worked on like all kinds of stuff. He's worked on the music for Titanic and just all
Mhm.
kinds of different things. Uh, Tim Burton, he was very much involved with Danny Elfman and Tim Burton films and stuff. Anyway, great piano player, producer named Ashley Witt. So we worked with him in Van Nuys, and we put a record together. He put the beats on it, and I had the guitars and the bass and all that, and then she did the vocals, and he did some synthesizer on it too. And uh, so we put this record together, and then we're like, oh, it's just the two of us. I'm like, well, we need a live band to go out and play this music. So we put
Mhm.
a 6-piece band together here, and we're playing around in Anchorage. And this is like, we're having fun. We're doing this with this band, and then we're like, well, let's do a tour because we're gonna have our like 30th wedding anniversary or whatever. So like, let's do a tour. We'll play East Coast, West Coast, or the other way around, and so it got to be really expensive. It turned out, but
Yes.
anyway.
Yeah, it was expensive.
So our drummer that we had in Anchorage, it's like he had something going
Didn't he
on.
injure himself?
He had hip surgery or knee surgery. So he was having knee surgery, and he's like, "Yeah, I can do the tour." And I'm like, "No, guy, it's not going to work. It's not going to work." 2 weeks before the tour, who's going to carry your drums for you? You know what I mean? I was like, "Who's gonna roadie? It's not going to work." So I was like, "All right, you sit out." He got pissed and he left. He quit the band, and so I hired Don Bowles to play with us, and Don was like, "Yeah, I'll play your
We
shows."
just asked him,
Yeah,
like, just,
Don was cool. He was,
hey, will ya? And he was
he's
like, yeah,
super
sure.
super friendly and willing to play with us. So he liked our music, so he's like, sure, I'll do it. And so we played in LA a bunch of shows, and we opened up for the Mau Mau's. We had the Mau Mau's play with us, and Rick Wilder and the Mau Mau's, and Mike Livingston was his last show playing with the Mau Mau's. Actually, we played at the Redwood, and we actually had Rick Wilder to come up and play with us. So Don's on drums, and I had somebody playing the guitar. Scott Ferris was on the guitar, and Stephanie Ferris was on backing
Backup
vocals.
vocals.
We had a
Mhm.
keyboard player come down with us, and I was playing bass. And that tour, I played bass because I was like, you can get a guitar player like at any street corner. You can just, but you can't get a bass player and a drummer to like, that's the hardest thing to find. It's to get the bass and drums. So anyway, we got Don, and he was great, and we just had a lot of fun with him, and he knew all the songs, and so we were gonna have William Michael Knapp play with us, from 76% Uncertain in Connecticut, right? He was going to play with us on the East Coast, and then like 2 weeks before we were going to go out, he backed out. So we're like, oh shit, or maybe it was 3 weeks before or something like that. And so I was like, oh shit. So we ended up. I was like, let's just get Don Bowles. He knows all the songs. So we flew Don Bowles out all the way out. And so, so like Don Bowles ended up staying at my mom's house and stuff.
That was so
we were
funny.
staying, we were staying.
His mom, your mom loved Don
She mom put up
Bowles.
with all kinds of our shit.
She put up with all these people
We love
playing
my
at her
mom. She's
house.
great. But
Yeah.
anyway,
She
so
loved Don.
she did. She liked
Don was
Don.
so nice to her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were funny. They kind of joked around a lot. So, but
Mhm.
anyway, so yeah, we're hanging out with Don Bowles, and he was a character, and he's really funny, and has all these great stories, and
Oh, he kept us laughing.
Yeah.
He was, with all of his glam rock stuff, like he's really into weird old
Yeah.
glam rock.
If anybody doesn't know, we're
Oh my
talking about Don
God,
Bowles.
yeah.
He was the Germs drummer, and he played 45 Grave and just a million other bands he's been
Mhm.
played with. Anyway, so we worked with Don, and we had the same lineup, except our Alaskan keyboard player didn't come. We got Rob Press from the Dolphin Room bands. So he was the guitar player and singer in Dolphin Room, and he lives out in Pittsburgh, and he plays keyboard as well. So he just jumped in there, and we started rehearsing. We got to the East Coast. You got a couple of days and rehearsed, and then we went out and did shows. And it was a light attendance, but it was fun. We had a good time and played the Brighton Bar, and we played in Connecticut, and some of the guys from 76% were uncertain were out there. And then we had a recording session set for Connecticut, so we played up and played a show up in Connecticut, and then we recorded at William Michael Knapp's friend, and we flew
Super nice guy.
we
I can't
yeah
remember
yeah
his name right
yeah
now.
Bonehead Studios.
Bonehead, yeah.
Yeah.
Great place, great guy.
And we flew Kramer from the Butthole Surfers to come up and record with us. So some of the songs from that session, it was called the Springtide of
Pure Reason.
Springtide of Pure Reason. It's an EP, but anyway, that has Kramer and Don Bowles and Kramer from the Butthole Surfers on there. And yeah, so Kramer was producing, and we had the guy engineering it, and then we just did some of the same songs from the original record, but the live band versions instead of like the produced with the techno drums and all that stuff on it. It's more of a live band sound,
And before that, when we first came to Alaska, we had we did an industrial band that we did tour with and played at CBGBs and stuff.
We're talking about 1994, 10 years, 1994 to 2004, and it was called Parallax One. We called it Parallax, and there's there's other groups called Parallax. Let's add a one to it, so we called it Parallax One.
Right.
And yeah, I know it's what it was.
Tour. We played at
we played CBGBs. We played the Court Tavern. That when Paul Declator died, he was supposed to come see us that night. We were at CBGBs, and he overdosed that night. And then so the next gig was actually going to be the Court Tavern, and so when we played the Court Tavern, it was like Bad Karma, the Anderson Council, and us, and Parallax One, and it was like she was on drums, I was on guitar, and we had our bass player, a guy named Dan, playing with us, and it was basically like Paul Declator's funeral show. All his friends basically were there, and
I believe that
it was fucking sad,
right.
It was tragic, and we actually went to Paul Declator's funeral. It was just tragic,
Yeah.
It was sad,
Yeah.
But I was really, I was really into drinking at the time, and I was really, really hitting the bottle pretty hard at that time. So, I had a lot of my own problems and had to grieve in my own way, and
And we had our little kids at the time, and I think that we brought our little kids with us and had them stay at your parents' house while we did the touring from there.
We've been juggling that. Yeah, but we have Wolfgang and Thor. Both of our sons experience autism, so they're on the spectrum, and we're on the spectrum, and so we're family, sympathetic to people that are different, and
Oh, totally.
Whenever you see people that are having that I think it was racism and sexism and all that stuff, it's all sort of it's all related to human rights. And so whenever you see someone getting picked on for being disabled or something, you never know, because the other stuff is just right behind it. It's all related. It's so you could just keep an eye out for that. There's a lot of racism stuff going on in the world right now, and we try to avoid that. We're really anti-fascist, right? So we don't,
as we always have been, and even
we're pro people and pro, you know, like,
Sure.
yeah,
And bringing it back to Sinister Stars. This
you gotta show it so you, yeah, there you go. So you can't,
the
light, you know,
a lot of the lyrics on there were
show them
it's
the back of it.
the back of it. Okay, it's a picture of us on the back. The
And you can get that on our Bandcamp.
right.
We'll
The,
we'll send you a free one, Joel. Go to your address, I'll
yeah,
get you a free one.
the lyrics are just a response to all of the intense othering that's been going on, not just in our modern era, but especially in the past 5 years, I would say. And I would hope that people would listen and feel supported to be yourself
Mhm.
and to be honored to be yourself. For anybody who's ever been pushed out, told they're wrong, they don't fit in, they don't look right, they don't act right, they don't talk right, they don't talk at all, they don't listen or can't listen or use any of your other senses the way that people are used to experiencing others around
I mean,
them using their senses,
our family members
that
are,
this
you
is
know,
for you.
our family members are disabled. We have people that are,
Mhm.
you know, trans in our family. We're very welcoming to all of our family members.
Absolutely. We're very proud of
Yeah.
people and how people are and should be accepted. So this is what I kind of heard in my head as I was listening to his music. And to make a song like We Live to Be Free, I just hope that that's like a universal, like, there's a lot of existential dread, especially unfortunately, I think with our young people,
Mhm.
like young people are just going through so much observation of this world and like, well, what am I even doing here? I'm hoping that people would understand that, it's universal. We all live to be free, to discover yourself and express yourself, and then you'll find your place, like what we've been talking about. Because as much as we like it, we talk about ourselves and we're here and we've done all these things. Ultimately, those things are in the past. And I hope to inspire and encourage people who are the future, people who are coming up. And I just really hope for a more free future for people than what we experienced and what seems to be the boot on everyone's neck
Well, like
for the past bunch of
we
years.
grew up in the shadow of the boomers. So, I mean, everything's been about the boomers. They've taken up all this space, you know, in front of our generation. And so I'm like, I hate to say this, I'm looking forward to the boomers to be
Well, they made a lot of cool things
lighten
too.
up a
I
little bit.
mean,
Let us have our fucking day in the
we
sun, you
haven't
know.
really had our say.
Gen
I
X,
agree
the
with
Gen
that.
X people are like really didn't get their day in the sun until recently, I don't think. I think right now the you know uh Kamala Harris, she's the Gen X, so I think that's pretty
Well, I feel
yeah,
like,
pretty cool.
yeah, I feel like a Gen X thing is to lift others up too. Like I feel like my light shines when I help others light shine. And I feel like that's a very Gen X thing. I don't want to be a person who takes up space when it should be younger people taking up that space. And you know, I think we live like that. Um, I just hope that our music reaches people. That's really my
Well,
hope for it.
yeah, I mean, you know, we live what with our kids, so we take care of them all the time, and
Yeah.
you know, we do family art shows, and you know, we're very encouraging of younger people that we know, and you know,
Well, I think, we're in an interesting point in history because, as an example, my stepson is 23 now. He just graduated college. But when he was in high school, my wife at the time and I would go to like the, parent teacher night and stuff. And we live in a fairly rural part of New Hampshire, not a mecca by any means. But we'd go to the high school and, the teachers would introduce themselves and we would talk to the English teacher and she would have pink hair and a nose ring.
Yeah.
And,
How weird is that?
she's essentially answering to us, we're the parents, we're the ones who have the control, right?
Mhm.
And we'd go to the cafeteria where all the extracurricular groups would have their booths set up. And in East Bumble, New Hampshire, they'd have like an LGBTQ after school club or the trans club. And I turned to my wife and I said, we're in charge now. We're the ones who are paying the taxes. We're the ones who own the property.
right.
And in our cases, we were both in our 40s at that time. So like, in a few more years, we're going to start looking at public service because that's the next step. After you get the property and you pay the taxes, you start kind of looking for serving the community. So I think we're just a couple years away from a really glorious time in our country where I think, my generation of weirdos
Hmm.
grew up on the values of punk rock and the values of alternative culture. I grew up in the 90s really where you saw a lot of things changing. You know, it wasn't a shocker to be gay necessarily in the 90s, so that was changing. Um, a lot of things happened in that generation. So we're kind of past middle age even at this point. Our kids are adults now. And
Yep.
it's okay, well, maybe now it's time to take that next step and get politically active. So I think a lot of the pushback we're seeing in this country, it's the last gasp of this shit. It's the
You're
last
right.
gasp of the old white men
So
telling
smart. Yep.
everybody what to do. And you're
It's
going to
gonna have to
start,
come get examined. You're right.
you
I
know,
get
we're going to start seeing the freaks running the show. I would say the next 5 to 10 years, 15 years will be very interesting in this country because you're going to start seeing my types, looking at the world and going, okay, well, maybe it's time to get involved in
Yeah.
running things, but it was a real turning point to be at that school and see a younger teacher kind of explaining to us what we can expect out of her as our son's teacher. And she's
Mhm.
all punked out. It's like, well, they're
Yeah.
answering to us now, so we're the ones who have that power. And I think it's people lose sight of it because they look at what's happening politically. And I remind people, it's like, the punk rockers are, as SSD said, the kids will have their say. That's
Yeah.
really true, but we have to be in our 50s to have our say, and it's going to happen. So I'm very hopeful for the future. I think the next 5 to 10 years will be very interesting. So a lot of the bullshit that we're seeing now, hopefully, is the reason why it's like they're crying out because they know they're losing control, and that's why we're seeing all this stuff right now.
So smart. I totally agree. That's how it's always been. That's when you get this age on you. You see these patterns and you're like, it's getting ready to die. And it feels that way. I totally get it. Like my stuff has been, of course, with the teachers, but also when other professionals in your life are like a lot younger than you, like your doctor. Like people like that. I'm like, oh, my son had to go see a specialist, and the specialist was barely older than my son himself. And I'm like, how did you get to be like a doctor and a specialist at this age? Were you called to become this particular medical professional but it's really fun. And I love learning from young people. They give me tips, they taught me I didn't even know how to put a shoe on my son when he was a baby, like a little baby shoe. And this young mother, I didn't have my son until I was like kind of well over 30. My oldest son, I didn't have him until then. I didn't even know how to put a shoe. I thought he'd never wear shoes. And then there was a young lady in the shoe place in Walmart, like this is how you do it. You open it up this way, you put their foot in it, and then you wrap it around. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. It's like you just have to be open. You can't, you just have to go with the flow, especially with technology and things like that. The young people really are, I'm not the person who's like, I can't do that because it's new and it's tech. I turned into like, I want to learn how to do that because it's new. And a lot of the younger people that I've worked with have helped me with that. So it's just been fun. It's fun. Fun to get older, I think. I would say. I would
Yeah.
recommend it to
Yeah.
the next person.
Or recommend to the younger people who are trying to find their footing out there is like, you will find your footing, and
Yes.
it's gonna be very hard and heartbreaking, but it's also gonna be beautiful. Hang in there, and you too will reach an
Yes.
age where you're gonna look back and say, it really did get better. You
I
know,
agree.
that's the trick is to get past that point where you're gonna see the better happen. Because you know what, it does happen. I always thought to myself, okay, when things get terrible, shorten the time frame of your worry. If you just have to get through the next hour or the next day, you know, that's enough to worry about. And before you know it, you're going to gather up enough hours and enough days to where you're going to look back and go, okay, well, I got over that hump. You know,
Oh,
there
totally.
I'm
no
just like
problem is
trying to do I'm
Yeah.
just trying to do bucket list stuff now, because I know that like I'm aging out. So like my grandfather and my father both died and they're in their 60s. And so I'm like, well, that's not that far away. I want to do stuff before, I get to be too old, whether I get sick or, who knows, you just don't know. You got to live your life every day and just get out there and do what you want to do.
And some of that stuff has driven reaching out to these, heroes and
Yeah.
amazing people that have done their music. And, we look up to them and we're like, I don't know, when I first worked with Paul Rosler, I saw that keyboard that he has in his studio that had spray painted on it, Nina Hagen Band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like ready to shit myself because I'm singing. and
Well, he's
and
played with
here's
Nina
that.
Hagen for like
And
7 or 8 years.
I'm like, oh
He's
my
an
God, I
awesome.
can't do this.
He
But
co-wrote
he
that
was great.
was it Anti-World? He
Yeah.
co-wrote that song with Nina
And
Hagen,
he was great
So
though.
great.
He encouraged me, and the whole finding a voice thing and being the voice thing is a whole nother thing to talk about. But anyway, Paul was great about that. Very open-minded and very encouraging, and could have been intimidated. I was felt that way, but not for long. After about 2 seconds where people would just be like, no, it's good, keep doing that. I was like, okay, that's why you guys are so cool. You have all this longevity and they're still creating
Yeah.
and they're making amazing things. So,
Yeah. Paul, the word genius, I think, is overused and used in ways that are undeserved. Having said that, Paul's a genius.
Yeah, I agree.
One of the few in my life I can look at and go, wow, you've really gone somewhere else. Paul's always very gracious and sends me his latest, like, what do you think of this? And it's always like he's going to take me somewhere I haven't been before. And I really appreciate that. And talk about a mind that, I always love conversations with him, either on the record or off the record, because he's got so much to say and so much insight and is willing to share that insight with others and be of service to people in that way. Wonderful guy. The music he does with his son Adam in that band I Gap Sequoia.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff. That last album. I mean, it broke my heart, but it's still beautiful. And he produced Inger's last album, which was amazing. So fascinating guy. But it's wonderful that you've had
the New Young Kings of Midnight, that
yeah.
is
Jatan Damone Quartet. He worked with those guys.
Yep. And it's amazing, with our histories, because obviously Atkins plays in our worlds and we're both from Jersey. But I lived in LA for a while. I was crashing onto Tom Damone's couch. I was rehearsing in Don Bowles' place with the band at the time. I later got to know Paul, so when I hit LA, I end up a kitten robot. Rikk Agnew floats, has floated in there as well. So it's amazing how small the world is. And that's because we were those weirdos who found our way around. And if you follow a path, you're going to end up knowing the right people, even if you don't plan to. When I moved to Los Angeles, I moved with $4,000 and no job.
Yeah.
And before I knew it, I'm staying at Chaton's place. I'm practicing at Don Bowles. You can't write this stuff. You can't go to LA with the purpose I'm going to go, rehearse at the German drummer's house and I'm going to do this. But you show up and you do it, and it's like something Atkins used to say, probably still does. If you jump, people will catch you.
Mhm.
If you go out and put yourself out there, the right people will understand that, and the right people will give you the help. And that's that entire LA scene. Interesting, colorful bunch of people for sure.
Yeah, we got in LA.
Yeah.
The first person that really believed in us was a promoter called Laura Feline, and I think
She was
we
out of
just got her
San
through.
Pedro.
How do we know
Well,
Laura?
I met Laura online when we were both DJing with Stench Radio. and we did a radio show with Stig Stench. Is a friend of ours even to this day, and he's the nephew of Gary Floyd from the Dicks. So Stig Stench is a super cool guy, and he's from Austin and that whole scene, and he living up in. Shout out to Stig and Mermaid up there and up in Tacoma. We were gonna go see them recently, but it didn't work out. But those guys are doing all right. And anyway, they were doing a fundraiser on the Stench Radio. We're doing a fundraiser or something, and some tickets for a 45 Grave concert came up, and I bid on it, and it was Laura Feline was putting on the concert. And so anyway,
she was from that scene.
I got the tickets, and I ended up giving it to somebody else. But I was like, she's like, I said, hey, check out my band. We want to come. We want to play LA sometime.
Bought the tickets to support the fundraiser, but gave them away to somebody in the area.
I just made the connection with Laura Feline. She was a promoter there in San Pedro and did a lot of punk shows.
Specialized in promoting female-fronted bands.
Yeah.
And so we were like, hey, why don't you have us play? She's like, yeah, come on down. We'll put together some shows. You can stay in the Winnebago at my house.
We stayed at her house. It was super nice to us. Yeah. She was really friendly.
She was so nice. Yeah. She has since passed.
Yeah.
But she was the first person who really believed we were even real being in Alaska, because sometimes they don't. Mm-hmm. I remember calling like CBGB's Hilly.
You're talking about in the 90s.
Way in the 90s, calling them
2000s.
up and asking for a gig. And he was like, how do I know you're even fucking real? Nobody calls here from Alaska,
It's true. Yeah, most people don't tour from here, from Alaska, to play CBGBs back in the day. But we did, and we're from there, so we knew, we ended up playing with another one of Martin Atkins' groups. Was what was that group that we played with?
Bathtub?
No. It was it will come
like
to
that?
me. It'll come to me later. Anyway, so anyway, there's the LA thing. We ended up hooking up with Don Bowles. I reached out to Don Bowles and I said, play some shows with us. So we did that in LA, and then we played the Redwood, and Rikk and Jeton showed up, and they were like just newly a couple, right? Mm-hmm. And they just showed up and came see our show, and they liked our set. They were sitting there and they're like, we liked you guys. And I was talking to Rikk, and they were super cool, and we just got to be friends. And so we dropped the bands after that tour. We played the West Coast shows, and then we went to the East Coast and did that bunch of shows, and then we dropped the band like a year later. Like we had actually, Don came up and played in Alaska, and we did a bunch of shows. We played a little bit longer in 2014. We played a little bit longer, and then I think by 2015 we dropped the band. We dropped the group altogether and just went as a duo, because we're like, we can't afford to tour as a 6-piece band. It just isn't going to work from Alaska. Like you can do that stuff when you're like traveling from like New Jersey to like Boston and back, but you can't do that here. It's too far.
Plus, we're just working it's hard to get 2, 3, 4, 6 adults in a room enough to like,
we're not kids
everyone
anymore.
Has a life.
We're busy. People want to get paid, and it wasn't even about that for us. It was about making art. We're just
we went to
into the
backing
music.
tracks.
We're like autistic as fuck. We're just like, let's make music. We're artists. We're just artists. We're artist weirdos, and we're like, it's not even about making money for us. It's more about making art. And is it are we getting off on what we're doing? So,
and time has gone by, and folks have the audiences have always accepted us as a duo. People they come up and with a lot of curiosity, and they go, how do you do what you do? How does it sound so cool? And I show them our gear, and they're like, oh my God, I'm going to do that. Nobody ever, at least I guess maybe they wouldn't come to my face and say, you suck because
so she has an art degree, right? She has an art degree. She's a great visual artist. So she does these shadow masks with these like wolf and
we give things away, and
we use those as part of like the props for our stage show.
Interactive things.
Anyway, so we started playing out as a duo. I play the guitar live, and Ivy does the vocals live, and we use the backing tracks. We just use backing tracks. We have like, it sounds like a live band or whatever, but it's a bit theatrical and everything. But we do that, and it's really out of necessity. That dog's acting crazy.
She's so funny. She's like, play with me, pet me.
Anyway, you can hear the hot breath coming.
She wants to come on camera.
Yeah, she wants to do something. Anyway, So that's what we do. We play out live like that. And so, we've been doing that since about 2016. And then we in that time we were like, hey, we saw all the great stuff that all the great groups and everything that's happening in the LA being recorded at Kit and Robot, like right about that time, 2015, 2016. And I'm like, well, we got to get in on that. I thought that was cool as fuck that Paul Roser's recording all these groups, And so, because Don Bowles was there, and then Rikk and Jeton were working with people, and so I'm like, well, we got to get in on that. It looks like a great scene, and I'm a fan of Paul Rossler's. I love the Screamers, and like since I was a kid, I used to love like that Gary Panther Screamers logo that was like imprinted on my brain. So it was like Black Flag, the 4 bars, the Screamers logo, just all those LA punk things were so like the mythos of that, from growing up in Jersey. Like I had the Ramones, and I had all that, but then there was the LA scene was huge. The legend of that was, so we're like, we got to get involved in that. So we're like, let's go to LA. And so we recorded a bunch of records with Paul already. We've got CXI 111, which is like a double record. Basically, it's like the CD is full. It's like 80 minutes full. It's a huge record. It'll probably be like 3. Yeah, like one of our songs is like 20 minutes long, and it was an improv. We improv the music, and
storytelling.
Jeton, Ivy and Jeton just went and did the words, and it was great. Ivy did the words, and then they both did the vocals. But that we have a bunch of tracks like that too on some of those records. That there was CXI 111, which is like a huge like a long record with a lot of experimentation on it. Then we also had Spirit Room, which is another record which has like 3 or 4 sort of like songs that we like brought to the table, and then everything else was like improv. We did like improv stuff in the studio with like Rikk and Jeton. Some stuff I just play bass and Rikk plays the guitar, because I'm like, if I'm not gonna play the guitar, who's gonna play the guitar? I want to get Rikk Agnew to play the guitar.
Good.
You know what I mean? Who do I want, Rikk or Geordie? Like I can have Rikk or I can have Geordie. Who do I want to get? So
Right.
it's gonna be Rikk. Rick's in LA. We're gonna play with Rikk, and so I actually did do a track with Geordie. I do have a track. It's a weird track.
Little known fact.
A little known fact. I have a track with Rikk Agnew and Geordie Walker of Killing Joke on it, and myself, and it's called Fudge Bubble, and it was kind of a goof, but it was this one. It's a group I made up called Fudge Bubble, and it was a track I produced, and it was just that's all it's called, Fudge Bubble, and it's got Rikk Agnew saying a funny little thing on it, and it's got Geordie saying this funny thing on it, and Geordie, I got some samples of Geordie's playing keyboard. He played some synthesizer riffs or something, and this guy in Prague sent me these things of Geordie he had recorded at some point. This guy Rob Bob, thank you Rob Bob for the samples. And they're just samples of Geordie when he was like screwing around, and they recorded it. And then Geordie says,
Archbishop.
This is Archbishop. Something like that. I don't even know.
He says Archbishop.
He says Archbishop, and then it's like the whole thing of Geordie. That's all Geordie says in it. But then Rikk Agnew says some other funny stuff about
Fudge Bubble, you're in trouble.
Or something like that. Anyway, it's really fun. It's a goofy track.
Funny song.
But we made it. We did this benefit compilation, and it's on there, so you can get it online. It's called Fudge Bubble. If you just type in Fudge Bubble and type in Alaskan, what's the name of the comp? Alaskan Gothic compilation. We did a benefit LGBTQ
Rainbow Goth.
So we put out 2 compilations. One of them was Rainbow Goth 1 and then Rainbow Goth 2, and the beneficiary for that compilation was a group LG.
It's Covenant House, which is
not Covenant House. No, it's the trans group that we work with. Trans teens, and they work with gay youth and LGBTQ youth.
The name is eluding me at the moment, but they do a lot of support for our community and working with people.
I mean, here in Anchorage, like the coolest club is the gay bar. It's like a bear bar, and that's like the coolest club. Yeah. It's called Mad Myrna's, and it's like the coolest club in town.
I will say the drag scene here is huge. Like the drag scene is so professional here. They're
Well,
so
let's be honest, the gay bar in Eddie City is always the coolest spot in town. You
oh
know,
my God.
even
This
in LA, like when
yeah.
I was living out in LA, the parlor in West Hollywood was the
Hmm.
spot.
Hmm.
Gay
Hmm.
bars are always better than the straight bars.
Oh my God.
Well,
Yes. Neighborhood is
Yeah,
awesome
it's fun.
here.
It's
They do
it's
so
very
well.
super
Very
nice, very
professional.
entertaining,
Yeah.
very fun.
Yeah.
So anyway, when Don Bowles actually did come here and play Alaska, we played at the gay bar. We played there, and he was, he loved it. So it was
Hmm.
great. And the sound system was awesome at the time too. So that was great.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
I
But that
remember
was the beauty of those comps.
So yeah, we have a track with Geordie and Rikk Agnew. Actually, it's called Fudge Bubble, and you can get it on the Rainbow Goth compilation too. So
cool.
and there's like a million bands. I don't know. There's like 40, 60 bands on there. I can't remember how many groups are on
Yeah,
there.
we
But
did it online.
it
We
was a
just
bunch of
asked
groups.
people to send us
Yeah,
tracks
it
to
was like
donate tracks.
Bandcamp thing.
Hmm.
Anyway, but yeah, so we did a bunch of records. We have CXI 111, Spirit Room, and we also did a compilation record, which was a
American Scenes
American Saints, which is like a punk
cover.
cover record, which we did a bunch of covers. So we did a Screamers cover, of course. Paul and Rikk played on it. Uh, we did a
Christian Death
Christian
cover.
Death cover, and Rikk played on
Rick
that.
played on it. Yep.
We did the Ramones, we did a Misfits song, we did a bunch of stuff. We did a Gun Club Sex Beat, we did a Stooges cover, we did, just a bunch of stuff, and
Hmm.
it's called American Saints. You can get that uh on our Bandcamp page. I don't even know if it's available to even preview, but if any of this stuff you want a copy of, we'll send you, Joel. We'll send you anything you want, so you can have any of this stuff. We'll send you a package of merch. How about that?
Oh, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. And
Yeah.
I'll link that recording with that Fudge Bubble recording for all you Geordie Walker completists out there can
Yeah.
check that
Gotta
out.
have that.
Yeah,
But
I thought he knew about it. Actually, you know what?
He talked to
I
him.
I
Yeah.
lost contact with Geordie for years, and last time I talked to Geordie, I talked to him on the phone when Paul Raven died, and because I worked for Killing Joke, so I was like, um, those guys were super nice, and I actually they asked me to work for him full time, and at the time, I just was a new dad, and I couldn't leave my kids, so I had to dad up, I had to man up, and so I had to do that, and of course I would have loved to have, been a pirate and gone on the road with those guys, but it just wasn't for me, at the time, but so I had contact with Geordie, and he gave me his phone number, and I hadn't talked to him in years, and about 6 months before he died, I called him, and I found the phone number that he had given me years ago, and it was some weird. It's in Prague.
Country
It
codes
was
and
in it was
stuff
in Prague,
in
so I actually
Prague.
called him up. Yeah, I called him up, and I was like, I said, hey, just, and he's like, yeah, who's this? He didn't know who, he didn't remember me or whatever. It was a long time because
He remembered you
so
after
much
you explained
so
it.
much water under the bridge. But yeah,
Mhm.
we finally got to talking, and it was a little bit weird for him to get the phone call because he hadn't heard me from me in years. But it was nice to hear from him, and I just was concerned that that so much time had gone, and then
I can't remember why you called him, but it was kind of like
I
out
just
of the
wanted,
blue. He's like, I
yeah,
just want to talk to
I
Geordie.
wanted to talk to him and see how he's doing, and just had a feeling I should talk to him, and so I sent him a bunch of emails and stuff, and just sent him pictures of the family and all that stuff, and I sent the song along. I said, hey man, here's the track that you're on, and he was like,
He was
huh?
like,
I don't think he knew anything about it. I thought that the guy Bob was in contact with him and that he knew about it. Didn't know about it. So that's my
that was a
fault.
little
Sorry.
awkward.
Sorry, Geordie. Sorry, Killing Joke people. I didn't, not trying to, overstep my bounds there, but I did. And so, unfortunately that's what it was. But so I guess I didn't really get to apologize for that, but he took it in stride. He didn't really care, and I think as long as there was no guitar, there was no Geordie guitar playing on it. I think it was nobody really cared. But if there was Geordie guitar playing on it, it would have to be, it would be an
This
issue
whole thing.
because
Yeah.
he's probably under contract or something. Who knows, But anyway, and the thing with Rikk on that track was I think he left me a message on my phone I think that's how I got it. Because I said one day,
He asked people to call.
I said one day,
leave a
on
message.
Facebook, I was like, hey, just leave me a message on, call me and leave me a message if you want to be on this track. And so he said this little limerick or something, and
They would take the snip
that's what I
put it
just
in the
sampled it
song.
and stuck it in the
Yeah.
song. It was funny.
Yeah,
But
Rick's such a riot.
yeah,
he's great.
yeah, he's a funny guy.
They did, like you said before, they did come up here and play.
We
Jaton Timon Quartet.
we actually brought them up.
here.
We brought them up.
And they stayed at our place.
Yeah, they
And we
stayed
took
here.
them around. We flew them to Fairbanks. We played this little tiny club in Fairbanks. We had such a fun
Paul
time.
Rossler was, yeah, we brought him up.
So
and
fun.
He stayed at our house, and Rikk and Jaton. And we went to Fairbanks and we played at the Marlin, this little
And there was a
college bar.
fan, there was a fan there that knew their music and knew Jaton, and was a huge fan. Who was like sitting there behind me crying because she couldn't believe that Jaton was like right there in front of her in Fairbanks. It's a college town, so it's hip, you know.
It was
They
about
have people who know these
November.
things
It
there.
wasn't that cold yet, but it
Wasn't
was
that
getting
cold
nippy, but it
yet.
wasn't that bad.
But it was great, and I think they had a unique experience of coming to Alaska and playing music here. A lot of young people came out for the, all ages show. It wasn't a huge attendance because you're not going to get that here. But
Right.
whoever was there was like, "Oh my God,
Well,
I can't believe it!"
You know who's playing at this, the arena is Leonard Skinner. That's what played.
I know, isn't
So
that funny?
just to give you an example of like what's going on here is they got Leonard Skinner.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it was, so we try. We brought those guys up. We brought Don Bulls up, and it was funny, and we had a great time. And it was
just
two
funny
separate
and
times, but
unique
that was
and interesting. Yeah.
And they got I think it was a bucket list for Rikk too. He really always wanted to come up and see Alaska. So we're like, we'll make dreams happen, make dreams come true. That one time, and it happens.
It's funny with Rikk because being a Jersey kid, I was listening to all these Christian death records growing up, and there's always that mystique about Roz, of course, but the other characters, Jaton and Rikk, and you think like they're these otherworldly kind of somewhat intimidating, scary goth people. And then you meet them and they're like the most kind-hearted,
the nicest,
giving, open. I mean, Rick's like that kind of guy who's like, if he sees there's a puddle, he'll take his shirt off and throw it on the ground so you can walk over it. I mean, that's the kind of guy Rikk is, Jaton, same thing. Talk about a giving, encouraging, supportive person.
Oh, totally. And super great musicians, so inspiring to be with them, and had so much fun hosting them, And you're right.
She cooked them veggie burgers.
I cooked and they were at our house, so our kids hung out with them. So now our kids know who they are, and they're like, "Ooh,"
our kid wears a Rikk Agnew
yeah.
t-shirt every night to bed.
He gave him a t-shirt, and it's like his favorite thing. He's still like he'll wear it. Yeah, the one with the hands on it.
Yeah.
He loves that thing, and our kid has the coolest t-shirts. But anyway, he loves that.
He wears an AOD t-shirt.
He will not
got TMA t-shirt.
Our kids like that stuff. I know the guys won't forget them. Because we're always looking at it or listening to it or whatever. They totally understand. They get it, and it was fun to I mean, it's a family house.
I love all those guys' punk rock influence as well. I mean, Rikk Agnew and the Adolescents too. That was great.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It was really cool. We were like hanging out, got to know those folks. I mean, they're all super nice and really cool people and really worldly. And it was really, I thought, really great. You play with people that are better than you, so you learn.
Yes.
And that's it was a blessing for us in that way. So we got to play with these guys, and they're still out there they're still great. All of them, everyone's still doing their thing, and we're really, really proud to be able to, like rub elbows with these folks. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we could go off for another 2 hours.
I know.
Probably have to do that when the next album comes out.
Yeah.
As far as this album, flash it up on the screen one more time so people can there you go. Sinister Stars. That's coming out early October. I will put up a ton of links in the video description so people can follow Cliff and Ivy, get the new record, which I highly recommend. Check out other stuff that they're involved in, and help celebrate not only the history that they've been a part of, but what they're doing currently, because that's always the most important thing. And the album is fantastic. Yes, they have t-shirts, all kinds of stuff. There you go. Fantastic. Well, again, my congratulations to you both on the new album. Lovely to finally connect with you in this way after so many years.
Thank you
And
so much.
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, of course. I thank you for taking me down New Jersey history. You know, it's become an important part of this channel, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love hearing from people who were back in eras I wasn't a part of, you know, and there's been a lot of reconnections with people from different scenes in Jersey because of this channel, and that's really a great thing. So I hope that continues. As far as
Well,
new
it's great. You're like a New Jersey like music historian, especially for our scene. Like you definitely are doing that. That's why I was really encouraged to come on here and kind of join in with that. Preliminary, I was sending you all that information just so you kind of knew, just so if we die, you have that information about what we did. That was like our little nugget of
Right.
like what we did. So I was just sending you that stuff so you could like preserve it in whatever fashion you would.
And I'll close with a PSA. Danny from Cyanamid, come on my channel. I've been talking to you for months about it. You got to come on. Andy from Pleased Youth, no excuse. You got to come on. The Genocide guys.
You get Rock and Roll Bob. Get Rock and Roll Bob Sexton, Robert Sexton, and
I'll
the
do
bass
it.
player,
I have
and
been talking to Mr. Sexton. Mr.
Pete
Sexton is the
Powers.
That'd be great.
Peter Powers. Pete
yeah.
Powers. Him on
Any
there.
of those guys, you know, you're always welcome. Any of the Pleased Youth guys, come on.
Greg
Um,
Walker.
you know, any of you guys watching, come on the show, reach out to me if I don't have your information. The door is always open. Mr. Bowles, yeah,
Mhm.
come on as
You should
well.
Great.
and so I don't know if you're aware, but I've like been in I'm like a real fanboy of those groups like TMA and Mike Wattage passed away, but right the label that's put out the TMA reissues uh Left for Dead Records is associated with Jim Boco Records, and that's James Reynolds. He put out those TMA reissues recently, and I'm a fan of those guys, and I'm still in contact with them, and I kind of help them on Facebook, like promote the band and stuff. So it was like kind of a no-brainer. I was sitting there, and I'm a fan of Detention, and so basically I created the Detention Facebook page just because I'm a fan. I'm like, there's no presence online for Detention at all. They're like this legendary punk band that has a sort of cult following because of like this, because of their music, but also like recently because of that KBD record that came out with like Dead Rock and Rollers, and they basically took the image from the Dead Rock and Rollers single and put it as the KBD compilation, just all that stuff. So anyway, so I created their Facebook page, and I just basically like said, I told Kevin Shields, it's like, here's a Facebook page of your band, it's like a fan page, but it's the official page now. So I basically gave it to him, and I co-run it, but it's for them to do whatever they want. And so anyway, I got him a record deal with James Reynolds on the Left for Dead Records. So all the Detention catalog is coming out this fall. It's coming out. They have an LP, which is like a selection of different songs, and then there's a 2 CD set, which is like their entire catalog. So, and it's all getting remastered as well. So look forward to that. New Jersey hardcore punk legends, Detention on
Yeah.
Left Records, and TMA. All that stuff got remastered and reissued. So I hope you get to have Dave Oldfield of TMA, the vocalist from TMA, and Kevin Shields, the bass player from Detention, on sometime, because those guys are friends of ours. And anyway, there's just like great local bands that that we were like we got to see when we were kids or teenagers or whatever, and they were a few years older than us, and they were like out there doing it, and they were like mad respect to the OG like Jersey hardcore guys. So
Yeah, definitely. Anybody watching this video, if you go in the video description, you'll see a link from my website. If you go on there, every entry has my contact information, my Gmail. Contact me that way if you're not on my Facebook, because the door is open, kind of an open call for Jersey, not only 80s, but 90s. 90s is more my time.
Mhm.
But I'd love to chronicle as much as possible because, obviously,
Great.
you know, we've lost some people over the years
Wow.
too, you know, and I think it's important that certain like the Tuckers of the world, the Paul Decolators of the world, you know,
Yeah.
these names have to be mentioned. The Bobby Ebbs of the world, you
Yeah.
know, these classic
Oh,
characters,
totally.
you know, Brian Damage, you know, all these different people who, you know, have left the building and gone upstairs, the Paul Ravens, the Geordies, you know, I mean,
Mhm.
there needs to be a place to, you know, mention all these different people. So this is hopefully going to be the place moving forward. So
Helps to tell their story, you know, they'll never die as long as people know their story and still think of them and know where their inspiration comes from.
yeah.
I think it's great. Thank you for that. Thank you for
Oh,
doing that. It's
yeah.
huge.
So anybody
Nice to meet
watching,
you. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
yeah, thank you guys for doing this. And we'll have to do this again sometime for sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I would love
check
that.
cliffandivy.com, or you can go to cliffandivy.bandcamp.com.
Yep.
And that's
That'll get you everywhere.
October 4th. You can pre-order right now. And so don't tell anybody, but if you buy one right now, you're going to get it early.
The
So
CDs we
the
already
CDs,
have.
we got a box, we got a big box
So
of
we could
CDs,
send
and
those.
we
Yeah.
got the t-shirts. So anybody who pre-orders that stuff, you can get it before
Before release date.
before the release date. But
But
you know,
we're okay
you
with
didn't
that.
hear it from us. So.
All the streaming platforms will have it on the 4th.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's gonna be like on all the most of the streaming things, and then we have vinyl coming out in November. So you can pre-order the vinyl, and we're actually gonna have a special Christmas vinyl coming out. It's gonna be 180 gram
Oh, nice.
red vinyl.
Mhm.
The black vinyl is 150 gram. So we're getting a bunch of those printed up, and then there's like a limited edition one that's not gonna come out until Christmas time. So
Mhm.
Well, again, my congratulations. I'll spread the word on this end, and we will be definitely doing this again, I'm sure.
thank you so
Sounds
much.
great. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for checking us out, everybody.